America is second to none when it comes to going to the moon, kicking ass in world wars, and creating genres of music. Blues, salsa, country, jazz, hip-hop, bluegrass, funk, doo-wop, ragtime, surf music, punk, disco, and of course, rock and roll all got their start in America. Unless you're into the symphony, polka, or the Australian didgeridoo, the music you're listening to either came from or has deep roots in America. On today's episode of The Prisoners of Rock and Roll, we're going to dive in and share who we think are the top American rock and roll bands of all time. So windows down and radios up, rock and rollers. It's time to go.
Yo.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of The Prisoners of Rock and Roll. I'm Bruce Kramer. I'm here with my two good friends and co-hosts, Ryan McCusker and Doug McCusker.
Hello. What up?
So welcome back. Last time we had a great discussion on whether Motley Crue deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And today we decided we're going to look into the top American rock and roll bands of all time. And we decided we were going to do our top six because everybody does a top five.
Yeah, 6 strings on the guitar.
There's three of us.
There's 666, and that's rock and roll. You don't get more rock than that.
There's 6 beers in a 6-pack.
That's true.
I got my cup of coffee and my PBR tall boy right here. So we didn't put a whole lot of rules around this, right? We just said we're going to do our top 6, and we didn't really say what that means.
No, I think there's a lot of bands that could be on this list, and there's going to be a lot of bands we're going to keep off this list. Like, personally, myself, I'm taking the Grateful Dead off, and I'm going to take Phish off, because they're obviously my favorite 2 American rock and roll bands. But I'm trying to make it a little bit more fun for myself, fun for our listeners, so they're off the table.
I also got away from the whole classic rock atmosphere. Like, everybody likes Creedence. Like, like bands like that. Like, if you guys pick Creedence, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just kept it personal to myself and what I grew up listening to and what inspired me.
Okay. So I started looking at the most influential bands of rock and roll, and I went way down the nerd rabbit hole. And I like the trying to make the connections with all the different bands and everything, and I realized that nobody's going to give a shit.
No, I do. Everything is connected.
I decided to take a step back, and I just tried to look at, like, who's the best.
I can appreciate that, though.
And we were sharing some notes. So, Doug, you wrote down, like, 2 pages of bands just as brain dump.
I did.
I added, like, another page and a half of notes. And this was really hard. I think when we all name ours, we haven't shared them ahead of time. And when we're done, we'll take a minute. Maybe we'll put together a list of, like, 20 acts that should have been on the list that just didn't make it. At some point, I was like, man, I wish we were doing a top 10 each, because this is hard.
This is going to be very difficult.
It was very hard to pick 6 bands because we're all musically, our tastes are all over the place. Punk to funk to rock and roll to hip hop to everything that you mentioned earlier.
So I guess we kind of settled on, like, it had to be a band. So that left out some individual artists, or that was the guideline that we set. Yeah. But if we went off that, it's all good.
It's all good. Whatever you want to put in there. If they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they're on the list.
And I think the only artist that we just ruled on was Johnny Cash.
Yes.
When we decided 2 weeks ago that this is what we were doing, I walked out the door of McCusker's going, he is on my list. But it's all good. We can have a discussion about him another day.
I also walked out, and the first thing Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll.
Yeah.
But
not in a band.
Not in a band, and he's not on my list.
All right. So some other background. I kind of like how I fell into this was you always hear, like, the British invasion, the Stones, the Beatles, the Who. But America invented rock and roll.
We sure did.
And they claim they did it better, too.
Almost every genre of rock music came out of America. Everything from the blues was what went overseas and inspired the Stones. We invented that.
I believe the Americans invented the backbeat. We are definitely the grandfather of laying that snare drum down, making the sound, dancing around.
Like, you even get to the Beatles, and the Beatles' first band, they were a skiffle band, and that came from America. The Beatles idolized American music.
No, we're going to get to that.
Yes, we are indeed. All right, so I think we're going to go around the horn and all do our top 6, and then we'll do our top 5, and we'll go so forth. And what do you think the over-under is on how many duplicates we have?
I would think...
Are we going to bet on this?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I say there's going to be at least 2.
I agree.
2? All right, I'm going to take the over, and I'm going to say 3. All right, so I'm going to write 2 on here. Ryan, you want to go first? You want to go Ryan, Doug, and me?
Yeah, I think I got a good start here.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, my number 6 for the week we had, it was a pretty big loss in guitar world, in music world. So number 6, I thought before he died, it was going to be my number 6 already. So I'm going to pick Van Halen. Van Halen's my number 6 best American rock and roll band. Eddie Van Halen changed the guitar. They had to change how music was written, the way that he did it, and he did it all himself. I think the way he played guitar influenced the whole generation on how to play guitar.
It's terrible that he passed away, but one of the silver linings has been there's so much like awesome videos being shared online. Of the Stern Show shared a video of the one guy like really breaking into how he played and the tapping and everything, total nerd musician stuff.
There's so much good stuff out there that you can dork out on.
David Lee Roth Van Halen or
So my generation, I'm sorry, I wasn't old enough to be the David Lee Roth years. It was like my MTV. Like, I remember Jump being on, but my years of Van Halen is Sammy Hagar. There's just so many great songs there. They had more hits with Sammy than they did Dave. They were always on the radio, those songs.
You know somebody's going to want to kill you for saying that.
Everybody wants to kill us because we say that. I agree with them.
I agree, too. I prefer the Sammy Hagar years.
That's okay.
Too.
But I asked a good friend of ours years ago, you guys may know him, the Blue Meanie. He's a huge Van Halen fan.
He's the one who's been sharing all this.
Yeah,
great
my
stuff
God,
I've been watching on
I
Facebook.
wanted to send him flowers because I felt so bad for him. But I asked him, with Eddie, Gary Sharon, David. He's like, it doesn't matter. It's all about Eddie. And I think that's true. I think it is all about Eddie. The Brown sound. Have you ever heard of that in the musician world?
No, I never heard that.
That's what they call the Eddie Van Halen sound, the Brown sound.
Okay.
Like with the pickups that he used and everything.
Sounds like something if you eat too many hot wings or something.
But Eddie Van Halen, when him and Alex were kids, started playing with Mike and Dave, they would do gigs in small clubs and they were a cover band. So, Eddie Van Halen, he invented a new way of playing, like Ryan was saying. Like, he invented that tapping thing. So at Alex, like, me and Ryan are brothers and we're in the same band for a million years together, like different bands. And Alex would say to Eddie, when he would do his solos, turn around. Don't let the crowd see you how you do, so somebody can steal that from you. That's yours. Don't let anybody steal from you. So he did that for a long time. Kept everybody in the dark how he pulled it off, which is absolutely amazing.
Is he like, he's one of the best guitarists since we've been alive.
Absolutely.
Trying to
Before I
think
was
of
alive.
anybody that's been revolutionary, that inventive, that creative, that different. The only dude I could even think of that came close was like Tom Morello for Rage Against the Machine. Sure. I've seen him a couple times in different bands.
Yeah.
And I've just been like, how the hell does that dude make that sound come out of that guitar?
But then you get to like Jimi Hendrix and then you get Jimmy Page. Is Eddie Van Halen better or as good or as inventive as those guys?
I guess he's building on what those guys did.
Let's talk about his instrument.
Frankenstein?
Yeah, it's the difference between all of those bands is that Eddie, when he was growing up, they're 2 kids from the Netherlands. And they were so poor when they came to America, is that Eddie had to make his own equipment. They were really poor. He couldn't go out and get effects or wah-wah pedals. What he did, he went down to the music store, bought Fender body and a Les Paul neck and glued them together. He messed around with pickups and did them in acid.
Yeah, I heard he was one of the first people to use the whammy bar in the guitar too. And I tried to think back at it. I'm like, I don't remember a whole lot of people ever using the whammy bar.
He made it his voice.
Did you ever see them live? Did you see Van Halen?
Oh, I saw them a lot.
Have you?
Yeah, I saw
Doug,
them a lot.
have you?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't. All the listeners out there, if somebody you like is coming around in concert and you're on the fence, just go.
Just
because
go.
you never know when that's your last chance.
I wish I went and saw the last tour with Van Halen, with David Lee Roth, but they didn't have Michael Anthony. So I was like, I really don't think I could go. Nothing against Wolfgang. God bless the kid.
He's a Van Halen.
He's a Van Halen.
Right.
And
there you go.
Just what Eddie Van Halen did for rock and roll guitar and for to change into that LA sound, just that California rock and roll, happy, good luck in town sound.
My wife and I have a handful of bands that we've gone and seen they're coming, screw it, let's just go because
you have to go.
And I can't think of one that I saw that I regret seeing.
You have to go because like Bruce said, you don't know when they're going to go.
Yeah. If you're into music, man, that is...
See everybody you you can. When they start having concerts again, just start going. Just see everybody you can.
I went to the Smithsonian a couple of years ago. You know, the room where they have Dorothy's shoes and Kermit the Frog and Fonzie's leather jacket. They had Frankenfender in there. It wasn't the actual original one. It was a replica that he made that he used on one of the tours with Dave. And they had it in this glass case, and I'm kind of walking behind the thing because I want to see like the reflectors on the back, and the security guard's like, sir, I'm like, yeah, I'm only going to be a second. Then I went back and I took like a picture of it, and it just blew like just every
like look at the fretboard, dude.
No, like cigarette marks on the thing, and it was an exact replica. Like it was an amazing thing to see. Even if it was a replica, he played it.
They made about 300 replicas about 10, 15 years ago that Eddie was involved in.
And there's a couple guitars, just you see it and you know whose guitar it is.
Sure.
And that is one of the most iconic,
red, white, and black.
Red, white, and black.
I think people talk about rock and roll and guitar solos in rock and roll. You know, a lot of people don't know that Eddie Van Halen's playing on Michael Jackson's Beat It. And that solo is sharp as a knife.
I heard this morning it was on YouTube or Facebook, somebody shared it was like that solo isolated.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And the dude is like, holy
the
shit.
screeching of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome.
And he told Michael Jackson that he changed some of his song. Like Michael Jackson was like forever grateful. I'm not sure
he
what
didn't
part.
pay him.
He didn't pay him anything. He didn't even get credit for it. But he went in voluntarily and just changed Michael Jackson's song without him knowing it.
Yeah, Quincy Jones called him up. He's like, I'll be right over. He said he threw the guitar in the truck without a case and just rode over to Quincy's studio, goes in there, and he's like, the song before it became a hit, oh, I played on this, who's going to know I played on this kid's album? And then bam. How do you think the guys in Van Halen felt? Van Halen, they were like, yo, dude, you should have saved that solo for us.
Yeah, right?
The guy didn't think that way.
I mean, we were talking last week about how Motley Crue's music is just fun. David Lee Roth era Van Halen is just fun music.
If you want to watch something fun, watch on YouTube Ozfest. It was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but they come out and they tear it up. You watch that and you're like, if I was alive when David Lee Roth was touring with Van Halen, I'd be a David Lee Roth guy, but I didn't have it. So that's why I say I'm a Sammy guy. But Dave, man, nobody's better than Dave.
I went back after the last week. I was just playing some old stuff. I guess for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge was the one album when I was growing up.
We saw him on that tour.
And the sound of when he's playing the drill over the guitar at the beginning of Pound Cake. And as soon as I heard that, I'm instantly back to being a teenager in like high school.
Great album.
It was really cool.
We saw Sammy a couple of years ago. What's the name of the Circle? And Mike Anthony's in it, and Jason Bonham's in it. And I don't know the name of his guitar player, but they played Pound Cake. You know, Sammy was in the band when he did it, so they played that song. And I kind of felt a certain way, and I think I even said to you after the show,
don't go out and do his trademark thing.
Exactly. Don't do the drill. Like, I thought that was that's his.
It's a rockin' song, no.
No, I know, but that's his thing.
He has every right to do it.
No, it's part of the song, and I get it. But,
you talking about Chickenfoot, the band?
No, it's called The Circle.
Okay.
And they went out, and it was like a Sammy Hagar commercial for Cabo Wabo.
Dude, Sammy Hagar is like 72 years old.
He looks it.
You think so? I think he looks great.
He looks like he has like some skin thing going on.
We were supposed to see him this summer with Whitesnake.
He still rocks.
Yeah, I think we were probably going to go to that.
Yeah, I'm sure. David Coverdale. Yeah, right.
We saw him last year. I've seen him like 3 times in the last year. He can still sing.
I wouldn't say that a lot on the.
Dude, he could still sing. He was asking in the crowd if anybody had any weed that they could pass up to him on the stage. It was
broke.
awesome. He had the jean jacket. He still got the hair, and the dude could still play. He could still sing.
Oh, that's funny.
All right, cool. So, Doug, you want to give your 6?
I picked my number 6 because it was influential me as a kid. It was just loud rock and roll, the concerts, it was just unreal. I picked Kiss. Kiss inspired everybody that was in a heavy metal band. Like, I wrote a list down here, who they inspired. They inspired acts like Anthrax, Pantera, White Zombie, Marilyn Manson, Lenny Kravitz, and even Garth Brooks. If you're around in the 70s, 80s, by the time I started listening to Kiss, they already had the makeup off. And it was the hair band era. And it connected with me. And imagine trying to go down a rabbit hole without the internet back when you were a kid and you're just trying to find everything you possibly can. Cassettes or magazines or this or that.
I remember when we were kids, we were so used to the hairband Kiss part.
Yeah.
And we were like, they wore makeup?
Yeah. And then they got so much cooler for me.
We went back and watched all the stuff with the makeup. We're like, oh my God, this band got so much cooler. We thought they were cool before, but now they're really cool.
I don't like Kiss. I know we said we're not going to be the grumpy old man. I'm like,
no.
A lot of people don't like Kiss.
don't like them. I don't get them. I
I
applaud
get
their.
that.
My line is like, they suck, but at least they've sucked for 30 years. They've been consistent.
Consistent.
Right. They'll sell you anything with their name on it. They're
They put some
they're
fun
brilliant
stuff out.
merchandisers.
They are.
Okay, I wrote some other facts down here about Kiss because I knew it was going to be a hard sell
You're not
for a
gonna-
lot of people.
You're not going to sell me on this, but go ahead.
They made 25 albums, 4 live albums, including that. They sold 110 million albums worldwide. They played over 2,000 shows.
They've been on their farewell tour for like 30 years.
That's all right.
right?
Get them on. Get
Them
them on.
and Cher have been on their farewell
Yeah.
tour forever, and Motley Crue.
That's all right. We'll go.
Yeah.
I'll keep on going.
But you know what? We were just talking about the bands. If they came around, I would be like, yeah, I'll go see them
They're
because
fun,
for the
dude.
show.
They
and
are
the
so much
showmanship.
fun.
Yeah.
And you know every song that they do.
Sure. Going back to Eddie Van Halen. Now, when they were recording Christine 16, Ace Frehley was leaving the band. So Gene Simmons invited Alex and Eddie Van Halen over to the house to record a demo so he can just work on the song, whatever. So Ace heard it, Eddie Van Halen solo. He's like, well, I'll never be able to play that. So eventually Ace left the band. So Eddie had really had enough of being with David Lee Roth, basically. And he was wanting to leave Van Halen to go play lead guitar player for Kiss.
I read that too.
And Gene Simmons like, yeah, you don't want to do that.
But couldn't you imagine Eddie coming out in makeup, like the Van Halen guitar, like the guitar, but that's his makeup.
7 foot high
Yeah,
platform shoes.
But like having
and-
the Eddie, guitar, the red and the white, that would be his
makeup.
That would be banging.
Okay, so another thing, like you said, they put their face on everything.
You can buy a coffin with the Kiss on it.
You can buy a coffin, but they only made a certain amount of them, and unfortunately,
You didn't get one.
I didn't get one. Too. I didn't
I
get
think
one.
that only
Unfortunately,
two people got them.
Only 2 people got them.
Dimebag and his
Darrell.
brother.
Vinnie Paul got one, who just passed away last year.
Are
And
they really?
And
Both-
they
both the guys from
they're
Pantera
buried
are
next
like-
to each other.
And they're buried in a Kiss coffin?
Both
Yeah,
of
both
them
of
are.
them.
No
Yeah.
shit.
And it
Yep.
plays like Detroit Rock City
as it goes
going into the
down.
ground.
Dan,
Like the fireworks go
Good
off.
night.
Why I put them on my list, another reason, is because they put a fantastic show on. Me and Ryan just saw them like maybe 2 years ago. And I had a smile from ear to ear. It's cheese galore. Everything's blowing up. They spend top dollar, like from balloons to like,
Balloons.
like
They're condoms, dude.
With Kiss
don't-
written on the side that they'll sell you outside.
In the parking lot.
oh, you should see their merch tent. It looks like, what's that store?
It's like the Hard Rock Cafe.
Right.
yeah, or Spencer's anyway.
But, I have to give it to Gene. He is the American dream. He came to this country not knowing anything and became one of the biggest rock and roll stars.
I agree with you. I was going to bring that up. Gene Simmons, if you had a definition, his background would be he was born in Israel. His mother was a Holocaust survivor. Her whole family was murdered. And they came over to America and he fell in love with the Beatles and he just started doing music. And look at him now. A lot of people don't like him, but
I love Gene.
I love Gene, too.
It's right. He's straight from the hip.
yeah.
He's money 24 hours a day. He wants to make the money. I think he's awesome to his fans, though.
He is.
too.
I've heard that.
When
yeah.
we met him,
yeah, we did meet him
we
when
were
we
kids when we met him on the Hot in the Shade tour, and he was so nice. He picked Doug and I out because we were small kids.
Yeah.
To talk to us and
Yeah.
sign autographs
Yeah.
out of like a bunch of people.
I wish I knew where that autograph was.
I have it.
I'm sure you do. You
I
keep
do.
everything.
I
Yeah.
do. I have it. I have it stored away.
My first memory of Gene Simmons is this god awful 1984 movie Runaway, when he's the
Tom
bad guy
Selleck? Is it
with
Tom
the,
Selleck?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The robot spiders.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, who is this dude playing the bad guy? And learned later
He
that it was Gene
scary.
Simmons.
He scared me in that
One
film.
thing that I learned, he says it happened, so who knows what happened. But they offered him, I never seen the movie Flashdance, never seen it in my life, but they offered him the role of being the male lead, which is the love interest. And he turned it down because he said he would ruin his image of being like a demon.
That's the one with like the chair, the
I
chair
guess
with the
so.
water.
Yeah, that's
and
all
the-
I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was
Don't
thinking.
feel- or
I was
the-
thinking of Saturday Night Fever. I was trying to think
Well, they
of
did do
Gene
the
in the
disco song.
span
They
in the
did do a
disco.
disco song,
Well,
so.
that's why I didn't think it was too far off.
Yeah.
I got those movies mixed up. I know they're far between, but
But like Ace Frehley inspired every
one of them did.
did.
Peter Criss, but inspired a lot of drummers. Gene, a lot of bass players.
Like Peter Criss studied under Gene Cooper. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Cooper. That's
He was-
amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I
Like
found
big
this,
band,
Yeah.
like legendary big band
Yeah.
drummer.
and
How does this big band drummer start this rock and roll all night drum beat? Like, I know it's like a basic 4/4 kind of thing, but simple as better.
Simple's better.
And it's just like, how does this guy? He learns drums playing swing music, and then he joins Kiss.
Yeah. Kiss never really had much effect on the listening audience until they released Alive back in 76, 77, I think it was. And
Classic.
It's classic.
If you're going to become a Kiss fan, that's the album.
That's the album you should listen to. And I found this out a couple years ago. Wildwood Convention Hall, they recorded some of that album there. The old one, not the new one. That's... Yeah, so Kiss, I love the dolls. I love all the cheese.
The fireworks.
I love the fireworks. I love the fire spitting. I love the blood. I love everything about it. And it's a part of who I am, and that's why it's my number 6.
Okay, that's a
I like it. Bruce
still,
hates it.
I still don't like them,
That's
but
okay.
I get it. But
it's a
I,
tough sell.
We're waiting for your turn to come up.
but I understand where they fit in the grand scheme of music.
Yeah.
It's just not my thing. So,
Yeah,
and
no.
I said at one point I'd love to do an episode on I know we said we're not going to be the grumpy old men complaining. I would love to do something on bands that are widely recognized as being great that you just don't like.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's
And
a
I've
lot
got
of
a
them.
really friggin' long list of those.
Oh, sure.
Where do we start?
So, mine would be James Taylor. I
agree with you on that.
I have a deep root. I should probably see a shrink from my hatred
Crosby,
of James
Stills,
Taylor.
and Nash too.
So-
I don't anything like that.
All right, so it's my turn. So
Yay!
my number 6 is the little old band from Texas, ZZ Top.
Okay,
Nice.
So I will write that down. I don't know why I need to write it down.
That's
My
a good
own
pick. That's a great pick.
I had a couple reasons why.
Great, let's hear 'em.
First of all, they are the longest running rock and roll band in the United States without a personnel change. They were founded in 1969.
Wow.
There's only 3 of them, so
Yeah.
there's less than there's not 5 dudes that one could OD. They have such an enormous friggin' sound for 3 dudes. It's like
Sure.
you hear them and you're like, holy.
It's
Those
easy.
guys are animals. Yeah.
And they were and they started with that dirty bluesy sound, but then they almost kind of became cartoon.
No, it's amazing how this band that would never be on MTV now was such an MTV hit.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
were like the faces of MTV there for a long.
The beards and the fuzzy guitars and
Jackets.
spinning guitars and just
and the girls and the hot rod.
Those songs were hot though too.
Yeah, and they had that. And again, I went down the rabbit hole trying to look at how do they even make that sound? They had that Billy Gibbons that churning it's just an iconic sound. I started writing down LaGrange, Sharp Dressed Man, Tush, Cheap Sunglasses, Legs, Give Me All Your Lovin'. All these songs that are just, man, if you are driving down the Jersey Shore and you were taking the back roads, you roll the windows down and you turn that shit up. And it is just, and so much of the British invasion was that blues sound.
and they were it.
That was America's response to that. It was hey man, we invented this stuff and we're better than
Yeah,
you.
they saved blues music. They opened up the Blues Museum of America. They opened it. I remember this was back in the 90s.
There's a documentary on Netflix called The Little Old Band from Texas.
I did watch
Yeah,
that.
that was great.
It's
fantastic.
If any of you listeners want to see a really great documentary, it's really good.
I am not surprised that you like the ZZ Top thing. Yeah, it's very bluesy, but then it's very yeehaw.
Yeah, right. I drove over here in my pickup truck, and I had to park a half mile away because I can't find. I keep going back to this. I love trying to understand the history of music and how it all ties in together, and it's just this is in my notes. If an alien landed on Earth and said, "What is this thing called American rock and roll?" They are who I would send to the alien.
Absolutely.
Totally.
100%.
In every way.
When we were making this list, ZZ Top is on one of my lists. It's in my top 5 when I start brainstorming these bands. And I think you're absolutely right. ZZ Top is America. It's good old America.
It's in that documentary, when they first started going on tour, and they were playing that whole Texas thing, and it was Texas back then was all hillbillies, and
This is when they're bringing the livestock
yeah,
out.
they were bringing cattle. On
That's why you
stage.
like it. 'Cause you can set that up in the backyard and have the chickens watch it.
Right. I have chickens in my backyard, so I do my own ZZ Top concert.
What's really funny, Philadelphia gets a bad rap to begin with. So on that tour, when they brought all the livestock in years ago, a guy I worked with when I had a real job, he told me he went to that show. So ZZ Top said they'll never play Philadelphia again because they had the livestock come in. So they had a bull. So they had it on this scissor lift. So Philadelphia being Philadelphia, what do they start doing? Start throwing stuff at the bull. The beer,
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
We booed Santa Claus. We throw frozen batteries at other players.
So I guess Dusty and, what was the guitar player's name?
Billy Gibbons.
Yeah. Are in this thing, and this bull's getting pissed off, and they're just get us down. So they said that
I can't even
they
imagine.
played Philadelphia again.
You go
Of
out
course.
in the
Yeah, I
park
saw
and-
them.
But
I want to say 2 years ago, I saw them. I mean, and they're old men now.
Yeah, they still bring it though. I bet.
Yeah.
They did a residency out in Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
And it was very successful.
It's funny. We saw them a week after seeing Springsteen. I took my kids to see Springsteen, and Springsteen, I'm sure I'll be talking about Springsteen a lot on
sure
the
you
show.
will.
Springsteen played for like 4 hours. And then we went and saw ZZ Top like the next week, and they played for an hour. And they walked up the stage, and my youngest son was like, "Oh, maybe they had to go take a nap. Are they much older than Springsteen?" I was like, "No, actually, they're all younger than Bruce Springsteen. But Bruce Springsteen has completely ruined your entire concert going experience for how long he plays."
Yeah,
Sure.
Thinking of bands too that had cashed in on MTV, they probably wouldn't have been the hits that they were without they had that ridiculous look. They had an
That's why
image.
it
They
worked.
had a theme. You know,
The 80s were
when they're all like,
ridiculous.
they kind of appear and they're doing like the thumbs up.
But they're a visual at that point.
Yeah.
They're a visual band.
They
Yeah.
became a visual band with
Yeah.
MTV, definitely.
I called them cartoons because of their look, but also Billy Gibbons is a really friggin' great guitar player
Yes, he
too.
is.
Eric Clapton is a really big fan of his.
Is he?
Yeah.
They're a three-piece band. It's very hard
that
to be in a
sound.
three-piece band and make that sound.
Yeah, they're very legendary for like they hate each other and they all have their own separate tour buses and they're kind of like
Crazy not to.
Right. It's like Spaceballs. We're not doing it for money. We're doing it for a shit ton of money. Like we'll just figure it out. We'll have the bus and we'll
Sure.
just keep going.
If you're in a band with somebody that long, you definitely need your own bus, your own space.
They asked Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, Keith Richards. They asked them like, "How do you guys stay together so long?" They're like, "We don't see each other." It's like get on stage.
I heard that they don't even see each other until they hit stage together.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on ZZ Top.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah, that was great.
You want to go your 5, Ryan?
Yeah, let's go to that. My number 5 is Metallica. Metallica is one of my favorite bands of all time. I don't even know where to start with them. They sold 110 million albums. That's insane. What metal was before Metallica came around. You know, metal was a British thing. There was like a lot of like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest.
That was the only genre of music I thought of that wasn't originated in America. And maybe it was, but I was thinking
No,
Sabbath.
I never
like,
thought of it that way. I never did. I never thought about that way, but yeah.
I was like, okay.
So the
They-
Brits invented metal?
I think that they had a good hand in it, but I think we perfected it. I mean, our bands are, I don't want to take anything from Iron Maiden. I know they're awesome and everything, but none of them are Eddie Van
I mean,
Halen
the big four
Yeah,
are all
sure.
American, right?
Yeah.
Metallica, Slayer,
Anthrax.
Anthrax, and Megadeth.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see these guys through decades. Me and Doug've seen them a bunch of times, and you know, when they were wasted all the time, they were pretty bad. Like, I remember going to the free concert they did at
Philadelphia?
Yeah, in the parking lot. And I was just like, man, these guys are done. They just sounded awful, and it was an awful show.
Oh, it was free though.
It was free. It was fine. But I just remember saying they're just too, like, messed up. They're definitely on the influence on something. Like, they were totally alcoholic. They were, they were becoming, you know?
They were called that for a long time, Alcoholica.
You know? And, I think once they got sober, they became a better band.
They helped bring modern heavy metal music into the mainstream too. I mean, everybody knows Sabbath. Maybe I'm making this too simple. They just seem like I don't know. They're still around.
Sure.
They're almost like an oldies act at this
They're
point.
like the Rolling Stones.
They are
Yeah.
the Rolling Stones of our generation.
Yeah, of like heavy metal music.
Yeah.
I think their sound is what's different than the British sound. Metallica's very melodic. They slowed it down a little bit, and they just added such an ambience on top of the drums. The drums just have to go doom, 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 doom. You don't have. They didn't do that right away. Sure, they had a lot of music that way, but they cut it in half. They slowed it down a little bit and still made it heavier.
We were shooting a shit before we started this, and we were talking about Metallica coming out with like an acoustic show.
Mm-hmm.
Can other heavy metal bands do that? Can they pull that off?
Not many,
Not many.
Right? Like they did the 2 album, the S&M with the orchestra.
which is great.
And
The
it was
new
like,
ones.
I mean, the version of 1 that they did with the orchestra was like, it's awesome. It's
I know you saw the first S&M, but
Yeah.
the new one, it's such a better orchestra.
So did they, to you, when they cut their hair and they came out like Load, Reload, like that second generation of them, is that,
I try to forget
I
about
was
it.
Do you?
like, what is going on?
But you go back to those albums now, and like you hear Fuel, and you hear
No,
some of
that
those
song
They're-
stand up.
Yeah, they're good now, but when that came out, we were like, "What is this?"
and then
It's
you
over.
were like, it's over. And then they said, hold my beer, here's Saint Anger. And you're
That
like,
was-
oh.
dude, I
Once
that's
they
the
start
worst thing I
suing
ever
the
did.
fans, I jumped off boat. I was just really, really put a bad taste in my mouth with the whole Napster thing.
But he saw the world changing.
He saw it, and somebody had to take the bullet. And you know,
did.
they're a big enough band that they stood that test of time. They jokingly sued their fans. They didn't go forward to it, but they were like, "Don't download our shit."
I felt like that was a point where a lot of people bailed on him. They're like,
I did.
Lars is a shitbag, and
I jumped boat for a good almost 10 years, and then we went to the Big Four concert in Yankee Stadium, and they blew it away.
But one thing about Metallica, they are very loyal to their fans. There's some Metallica cover band out there, and forgive me, I forget the name of them, but they're pretty popular. So a couple years ago, their van caught on fire. They lost all their equipment, all their guitars, this, that, blah, blah, blah.
Vintage guitars.
Metallica found out about this and sent it them original instruments, original amps that still work, that were taken care of, and they just gave it to them.
Yeah, they take care of their fans. I mean, don't download their music for free, but if you burn your van down, you need a couple instruments. Lars was like, "Hey, here you go. Here's a couple drums."
I always liked them. I didn't always like them. That's not fair.
I always did. When I first heard one, I ran out to the record store and bought Justice for All. I was like 12 or 13 years old.
The bad dudes in high school were wearing the Metallica shirts.
I remember seeing the kids.
And Justice for All and Ride
Yeah.
the Lightning. I got into them when the Black Album came out. To
Sure.
me, I feel like that's when they really hit like mainstream.
MTV.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really when I started getting into like music too. And you know, like Enter Sandman was on the radio or on the video. I don't. How many times that we're going to talk about bands and you're like, well, the videos.
Well, they were the band that didn't have a video for a long time.
Funny enough, that they made their cult following off bootlegs.
Yeah.
Like they would trade tapes. Fans would trade tapes all the time through magazines and everything. Before the internet, they'd just be trading tapes and burning the same tape over and over and over again. Next thing you know, the album's over in Germany and they got a following in Germany.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Did you happen to hear their last album, Hardwired Self-Destruct?
No, I don't think so.
It's great.
It's
I
great.
like it.
Is
It's
it?
hands down their best album they've done since the Black Album.
Okay.
And
I'll give it a listen.
You should. I think you would like it. Big reason for that is because I got Rob Trujillo in the band.
He's great.
He brought me and Ryan have this conversation all the time. He brought so much to that band. That guy has so much talent. It's unreal.
He came into the band when they got sober and he made them into a better band.
And they gave him writing credits. They gave him 16 writing credits.
Wow.
Where Cliff Burton, you can't say enough about Cliff. He has 11 writing credits. Jason Newsted only has 3. They gave him 16. These guys, you talk about Gene Simmons liking his money and this and that.
Oh,
blah, blah.
Metallica.
Metallica, 16 writing credits. So that tells you something about the talent that he brought to that band. And as a bass player, he is hands down the best bass player in the game right now. Hands down.
He's a great bass player. For metal, I haven't really stuck my nose in the metal in the last 10 years. If you're not a classic metal band, I don't listen to you. I'm sorry. I really didn't get into the new metal. That was cool 20 years ago. I don't listen to any of those. Korn's a good band. Korn, yeah, Bruce is rolling his eyes, but I have to give it up to Korn. I still like seeing them. But Metallica is my number 5.
Okay. They're a great band.
I'm sure we'll hear from them later again.
Heavy metal band that's also become like a cornerstone of rock and roll. Like I said, they're the Rolling Stones of heavy metal at this point.
I was going to say, like years ago, I said Guns N' Roses will be the Rolling Stones. Guns N' Roses gave it up.
Yeah.
And here's Metallica.
You go to a show, you see parents bringing their kids.
Sure. About 5 years ago, we're sitting in the bar and one comes on. My dad's sitting here. You know, it's like maybe it's a little too early to have one playing, so it's probably like 6 o'clock at night. So my dad turns around. He's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "Dude, this is classic rock." You think about it, that song's 20 years, and everybody at the bar is like, "Yeah, man, this is classic rock."
Turn it off. But yeah, Metallica number 5. I'm sticking with it. That's my story.
Cool. All right, Doug, what you got for number 5?
All right, number 5, I had the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, being a bass player, you know, you can't say anything more about Flea that people don't know. If you don't know about it, study about him. He's an absolute genius. He's a prodigy. He started playing the trumpet when he was a kid because his dad was a jazz musician, and just the background of just him alone is an amazing story.
He is funk.
And he's rated number 2 by Rolling Stone magazine, our favorite thing to bring up. Rated number 2, John Entwistle's was number 1. And they had Jaco Pastorius as number 5.
People don't know who Jaco is.
I guess so. It is Rolling Stone magazine.
They're lucky we even got Jaco in there.
Well, he beat Paul McCartney. And Paul McCartney's a great bass player also. He's a great great melodies. Okay, so Chili Peppers, they have 12 albums sold. They sold 80 million albums worldwide. They played 2,542 shows, concerts as of 2019. Flea was rated number 2 bass player. John Frusciante, he's self-taught, age 10 years old. He quit school at 16. He was in the Chili Peppers by 18. He is hands down a very gifted guitar player and responsible for a lot of their hits.
Yeah, they put great albums out with him.
Like Under the Bridge.
The Red Hot Chili Peppers are my number 5 as well,
Oh,
and I'm only bringing
awesome.
that up only
Yeah.
because
No, get
my
into it.
turn is next.
Yeah,
so
get
like
into it.
let's.
Yeah. Get
I
into it.
completely agree. They weren't even on my radar, and as I was looking at the brainstorming list, I was like, you know what? Every time their music is on, I never turn it off.
Unless it's
on
Under
the radio.
Bridge. Unless it's Under the Bridge. I never need to hear that song ever
See,
again
I
in my
love
life.
that song.
MTV just forced it down my throat when I was a kid.
Some of the stuff that you're saying is the exact same stuff. I was like, Flea, the slap bass style. John Frusciante is a great guitar player, but he doesn't do guitar solos. He's all about writing melodies.
Absolutely. He's a prodigy. They gave it a guitar to him when he was 10.
And when he left the band and Dave Navarro joined,
That was
nightmare.
I hate that album.
That's when you guys were
One
working
Hot
at the
Minute.
record
I
store.
know we said we're not going to be the grumpy old man.
No,
but
nobody
that-
liked it. It looked good on paper. It didn't work.
Yeah, it
Bad
was just
album.
like, oh, cool. This other like really talented guitar player, and he tried to pull their sound differently, and it just didn't work.
John left the band a couple years ago. So their last 2 albums, which this kid Josh, forgive me, I forget his last name. The guy Josh plays on. He's been playing with the band on stage for at least 15 years, I think, and that guy is great. So a lot of people gave him a lot of crap about, oh, he's no John. Well, here you go. He's John's best friend. He's playing using all his equipment, his guitars and his equipment, and he's been playing with them on stage for years. Now John's coming back into the band, which I recently heard, which I'm very excited about. They're going to do like another run for like another Grammy. Flea's got to give more money to his charities, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about. He runs these charities like for free music programs for kids that can't afford it and just show interest. He went back to University of California in 2006, we'll say, and he went back for music composition and jazz trumpet, even though he plays kid. And you know the reason why? There's a lot of things out there that I don't know and I want to know. I just really, really, as a bass player, do I consider him one of my influences playing? Not as a kid, but as an adult, I find myself more and more being intrigued with his sound.
Flea did a lot of work on other albums
Yeah.
too. I read his book this year, Acid for Children. It was
a great
was
title.
really a great book. He was a bad kid.
Sure, he's
Like the book only goes up to before the Chili Peppers explode. Like he had the band when the book was going on, but when they became super famous, he didn't even get to that part of the book. So there'd probably be another book coming out.
Blood Sugar Sex Magic was a absolute solid part of my listening rotation as a kid.
Sure.
As a teenager. Like I had the t-shirt. I mean, and they went like a band that has kind of like evolved and changed their sound. Are they funk? Are they rock? Are they heavy metal? Are
They're
they
the
heavy?
funky monkey.
Like they're constantly in.
They're everything.
Yeah.
They are America. They're everything in
Everything
one.
that's funky
yeah.
about America.
And I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
like, this
probably
was a
said
great
that one
band.
time.
We were doing this. Like, I put headphones on. I was really listening to them. I was really nerding out. And I was like, man, if you you listen to the bass line
Yeah.
on some of their songs and you pay attention to it, you're just like, damn, this is really good. And when they started coming out with like Under the Bridge, and Anthony Kiedis said that was like the first song he sang.
Yeah, no
and he
shit.
was like, I am not a singer.
He is not a singer.
No, he's
Well,
not.
no, he is
Well,
not.
but so after that, he worked with a vocal coach and tried to get better. Go back and listen to Breaking the Girl on Blood
Oh,
Sugar Sex
yeah.
Magic, and then go listen to Snow Hayo or Other Side.
Sure.
It's night and day how much he's improved as a singer.
It has. But have you've seen them live, right?
I have not. That,
Oh,
again,
well-
another band that my wife was just saying last night.
Yeah.
She's like, well, how the hell have we never seen them?
Forgive me, God, rock and roll fans. He is not a great singer
Ugh.
at all, especially live.
That's why I
the
stopped
Chili
going and
Peppers
seeing them.
is about the band. Now, talking about the band, they got one of the coolest guys in rock and roll in his band, Chad Smith. Is hands down. Like, these guys are all doing yoga and getting ready for the show. What's he doing? Walking around with a 6-pack with a holder. He's going hanging out, like doing karaoke with singing Britney Spears songs. He tried out for Spinal Tap when that thing was coming back, and he's just slugging beers down there, like,
And he did that thing with Will Ferrell.
that was horrible. Yeah, that was horrible.
Red Hot Chili Peppers, to me, that beginning stuff was great, but when he tried to start singing,
Yeah.
he just turned me off. Like, especially the later on albums, he goes in and out of key so bad, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. See, I'm the complete opposite. I like
Yeah.
their
I
their
wanted to go.
newer
I love their
stuff.
newer stuff.
The
The scat, yeah.
I love that funky stuff, but when he tries to think that he thinks he could sing, I think Rick Rubin's sick in his head that he can sing.
Yeah, see, I'm the complete
So am I.
opposite. That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, by the way, is hands down
Great
one of my
album.
It's a great album. Great album.
Yeah, their last couple albums, everything except One Hot Minute, which I even wrote
Yeah.
down like that the airplane. Like
I think that's horrible. They still play that on the radio.
I
I don't know
know.
why. I'm like, why are they playing this song?
yeah.
Do you like the original Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff? You
It's
listen
like
to
the old the Stevie Wonder cover.
before there was John Frothy, there was
Yeah.
LL.
Yeah, like
and he's the original guitar player.
like
Yeah.
that's the old like walking across the street with the sock
Yeah,
naked
yeah,
except
yeah.
the tube socks.
There's like
and
the one song, "If You See Me Getting High,
Yeah.
Knock Me Down." That's like one of his
they're
songs.
definitely like the bass was like chunkier then. It was more like a funk
Yeah.
Parliament
Yeah.
Parliament.
I just
Flea.
watched a video with George Clinton, like and he produced one of their albums, George Clinton.
Oh,
And-
did he?
Yeah. Yeah. I forget what album it was. The first guitar player, what was his name?
LL
Oh,
something.
They still write songs dedicated to him. I think like the other sides about him. And there's I've read about today, there's quite a few songs. They got a love for each other. That is
Love.
They do. They have a love for each other that's unbreakable. Look at John. This is the third time he left the band. He's
Yeah,
coming
right.
back. You know,
I think he went back to rehab.
he probably did. I don't. Who knows? But it's just like the second time he came back, him and Flea kept in touch, and Flea went over to his house and clean and doing yoga and just playing and creating. And Flea came over and he's like, "Yeah, I think you should join the band again." And John was like, "Yeah, I think that's the best idea that possibly good for me and for us." And when they said us, they're a unit. You know, I'm not really sure where Chad Smith fits in all this. He's just like, again, the coolest guy in rock and roll. But those guys are just destined to play music together. You know, I just
If those guys got together and they made a sound and it's funky.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's like it's so unique. You know,
Totally.
so different than anything else.
Yeah.
You come up with your own sound. Only them can do what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, and they tried to do it with the other guy, another rock star, and it just didn't work, you know? And Flea played for Jane's Addiction.
He also played for Black Flag.
Yeah. Flea will play, I think he'll go do anything.
He's also with in that movie The Chase with Anthony Kiedis and
yes.
Henry Rollins, which is
We're going to be thinking ready, man.
it's such a
With Henry Rollins.
It's so terrible,
Yeah, Henry
but
Rollins
it's
in that
great.
movie.
Henry Rollins is amazing in that
He's
movie.
the cop.
We're definitely going to do an episode on Henry Rollins.
Absolutely.
So, all right, cool. So that's your number 5 and my number 5. So let's get back to Ryan's number 4.
Okay, my number 4. Doug's gonna hate this. My number 4 is The Doors.
Ugh.
The Doors, man. I mean,
I know, I get it. I get it. I
They
lighten
are
up on The Doors a
you know,
lot over
he
the
was,
years.
He was such an American icon. He made it a whole other side of being the front man. So mysterious. So he was the Lizard King. I don't know
Sure.
what else to say to describe Jim Morrison. The band itself had a funky, not a funky. So now I'm still thinking of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. The
That bluesy.
the bluesy thing. It's blues band with no bottom, lack of bass. You know, it gave it this strange, unique sound. You know, it sounded like a carnival sideshow organ along with jazz Latin beats. You know, the guitar had this really strange picking to it.
Yeah. Robbie Krieger's great.
Ray Manzarek playing the keyboard. I just remember it being like high up in the mix, the sound, like that
Yeah.
piano, keyboard, harpsichord, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah,
You called him the Lizard King. Like, I mean, I have an English degree, and I took a class. I took a class in college on contemporary American poetry, and I had to write a paper on a modern poet. And I tried writing it on a book of his stuff, and I got like halfway through it, and I'm like, I can't freaking do it.
no,
Like,
not
I just-
more.
It's awful.
More his song lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm more of his song, not his
Yeah.
writing. His song lyrics were very poetic.
I did finish that paper. I changed and wrote it on a Henry Rollins book
Very
instead
nice.
of James, instead
Very
of
nice.
Jim Morrison.
Yeah. I lighten up a lot over the years with the Doors. I love the quote in Almost Famous where the guy standing there, he's like, Jim Morrison, the Doors, he's a drunken buffoon. Now give me the guess who. At least they have the courage to admit they're drunken buffoons. But within the last year, I really did
mean,
like the Doors. Like I just
their
force-fed my
music,
whole life. You know?
It's swung. Their music
Yeah, I
is
agree.
very swinging.
I agree.
You know, here's like 1968, The Summer of Love. And the Doors, they're like the opposite. They were psychedelic, but they were the dark side of psychedelic. If you want to think of the 60s, what they were talking about, they were like, no peace of love. This Vietnam thing's going on.
I struggled with them, so they were on my final, and they didn't They didn't make my list. They were kind of like America's answer to that psychedelic sound.
Oh yeah. Well, along with the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane, and there was that whole scene. But the Doors were from like Hollywood, California, love and lust and decadent.
Right. He's like taking his pants off on stage, and
he was an
all
asshole.
that.
I'm not saying he was an asshole. But would he contribute? No. The band. What the band contribute?
Sure.
They're just all fabulous musicians.
Yeah.
I don't have anything written down like how many albums they sold or anything like that.
They're the Doors.
I think they're the Doors. I mean, you can look at the movie. The movie's a good introduction for the Doors. If you don't have anything to do with the Doors, you don't know anything, maybe start with the movie. It's very dark. It's one way. They made Jim look like a real piece of shit. We're trying to keep
kids.
it clean.
Right.
But
He was, though.
He was a self-centered guy.
Yeah.
Those guys needed him bad to be in that band. And he just act like, oh, I'll show up when I want to show up. But it's not going to stop me from saying that they're one of America's influential bands.
I mean, collectively between the three of us, we're trying to do the 18 greatest acts of all in American history. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have no argument against
they
that.
got the tunes.
They didn't make my list,
They
but
pushed the envelope.
but rock on.
They went on Ed Sullivan and, they said, please don't say this. And Jim went, can you take me higher? That's my pick, though. The Doors, Jim Morrison, and the boys.
Okay.
Doug, what you got?
Okay, my number 4, I have the Beastie Boys. Now, growing up in the 90s, even in the 80s, being a kid, I think they were an MTV band. They were the Fight for Your Right to Party, which was really, they were making fun of all that scene and everything like that. But here you have 3 guys who started in a punk band and then moved into a hip hop band. And the reason why I put them on my rock and roll, because they are rock and roll, for everything from like Sabotage and a couple really deep tracks that I won't waste everybody's time on. But, they came out with an instrumental album that won a Grammy.
That album is, what it's called, Le Fin du Monde or whatever it's called. It's really good.
The one that they won a Grammy for was the Mix Up. And these guys learn. Okay, let me get back into like the Beastie Boys before I get ahead of myself. They started as a punk band. So then they did like the first album, then they did Paul's Boutique, that really a lot of people didn't get because they were ahead of their time. So then they went in and did Ill Communications or Check Your Head back to back. They went in, they learned how to play their instruments. They created a sound, which is like hands down one of the most influential things of my time, of our time. I would hope so.
Not my time.
Really?
I love the Beastie Boys. They're a great frat band.
No, but you got to get deeper into their musicianship and what they created musically. And they were like Biz Marquis, more famous for that one song, but he produced the majority of those albums. Rick Rubin did the beginning of them, but they were also like part of the times. Like in 1996, they helped usher in the internet era by having a website designed during the tour in 1995. No band did that, so they kind of, which a band that's everybody's doing. They started it. They were holding out. They were giving out floppy disks at their show, which was a mistake because everybody started throwing
projectiles.
Yeah, absolutely. But technology wise, they're ahead of it. Like I seen a video of them like home movies. I have not read the book and I have not seen the documentary they just made. It's on my list of things to do.
I haven't seen it
It's
either.
on my list of things to do. On fashion, music, Sabotage, like the quirkiness of them.
They are funny.
Yeah, I mean, the videos were great.
Yeah.
The Sabotage video still holds up.
You could just even be like, "Hey, ladies!"
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Funky.
Yeah.
Everybody
and
knows
like
that.
Shake Your Rump. Everybody knows
Right.
a Beastie Boys song.
They're definitely a party band.
Yeah.
When we were kids, Doug bought the album.
It was
when
one
we
of
were
the
12
first albums
years
I was
old.
allowed to have to buy. Like it was that and Poison Loco the Cat Dragged In. They're the first 2 albums I was allowed to buy.
But
Like,
the
they were-
Beastie Boy album was just so groundbreaking at the time. And Doug was asking me last night, can I put this on this list? Is it rock and roll? I'm like, yeah, it's rock and roll. That first album is very rock and roll.
But you don't think like Check
Biggie
Your Head.
Smalls is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so it's all good. But they absolutely, they're rock and roll.
Like Check Your Head and Ill Communication. In the 90s, they're my 2 albums that really
it was
like,
hip. That was
had
hip
a
hop.
part.
That was a big hip hop.
I don't know, man. I don't know. They came in at the right time. They resurfaced. They recreate themselves at the right time when Nirvana just started coming out with the grunge and the flannel and the skating and this and that. They had a big part of culture.
Yeah, they were before all that grunge
Yeah.
stuff.
They for a bunch of guys who got up there and just start like
They're
have
very-
strippers on their stage and then become very respectable.
They're very intelligent guys.
It's like unfortunately, like when MCA died, this guy's got to be okay. The Dalai Lama went to go see him 3 times when he was like dying. You know,
No,
of course he gave him a lot of money too.
Yeah.
You know,
I think Mike D was the best one out of all of them.
yeah.
You know, he had that higher, like he was kicking it, man.
Yeah. Go back and listen to some of their instrumental stuff.
No, I gave that album to you.
I remember, and I'm very.
He's
I'm forever
talking about an
grateful.
album that I gave him, and then I never saw it again.
Yeah, because I loved it. Okay, I'm a bass player. MCA developed into an amazing bass player. Simple is better, and he started working with effects, and which at that time I never really heard any really band do anything like that. And this is before like the stupid Limp Bizkit and whatever other
way
bands I won't
before.
even mention.
Even as you're sitting there talking, I'm thinking of how many, just one line. If I walked in here and went, Brass Monkey,
Oh,
you know
sure.
exactly what
Sure.
the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
you got to fight for your right. Like, you know exactly
Yeah.
what that is. They're a great pick.
Thank you. I think they're one of my most original picks. They are my most original pick that I have in here.
It is a great pick.
Cool.
They were one of the most violent
Yeah.
concerts I ever went and saw. I thought there was a few times I thought I was going to die at a concert. That was one of
I was
them.
with you.
We were
Yeah.
on the floor and they were in the round. And like I said, it was a frat party.
It was a
basically.
frat party.
And dude, we were so in there like sardines.
His general mission.
And they went into sabotage, and it was like, all right, we're all moving left. All right, we're all
was
going
crazy.
right. And it was definitely if like a whole bunch of us fell, there would have been a
The
problem.
whole thing would
It was
have
a
went
mess.
sideways.
Yeah,
It was a mess.
It was too many people on the floor.
And our buddy Mike was sitting like on the first level, and he has his seat and everything like that. I remember seeing him. He just like waves to us, like he was like, "Good luck with that."
Oh, that was a bad experience.
It was a great experience and a bad experience.
I really thought I was going to die.
I wish I got an opportunity to see them again, but unfortunately,
Again, another band I've never seen. And I
Yeah.
think other than you guys, I've been to more concerts than most people I know.
Sure.
And I've only seen one of these bands so far that we're talking about. So, all right. So
We lived right here, though.
Yeah,
It's-
we lived- yeah.
we lived
Walking
blocks,
distance.
blocks away from the stadium.
Yeah.
We were spoiled brats growing up. We would just walk down to the Spectrum. Who's playing tonight? You know?
we saw a lot of shows like buy tickets that day and got great seats.
we good with the Beastie Boys?
Yeah, I think
right.
I covered old base.
Yeah, boy.
My number 4 is Aerosmith.
Good
Awesome.
one.
So, and this was another band that wasn't on my radar till I really started thinking about it.
No, they're great.
And then Pump was the first album I ever bought.
Great album.
I bought it on cassette. First album I ever bought. I didn't have a whole lot of exposure to their music before Permanent Vacation.
Okay.
And when I picked them, I went back and really dove into like Toys in the Attic.
Oh,
and stuff.
Toys and Rocks.
And the only thing I could compare it to was being a fan of new AC/DC. And then at one point, somebody gave me every CD that Bon Scott did.
Yeah.
And I fired them up and I was like, holy shit, it's a completely different sound and it's great. I felt like that with early Aerosmith.
Steven Tyler, Joe Perry are the greatest writing team next to Lennon and McCartney. They are the Toxic Twins, man.
Right. The Brits have the Glimmer Twins with Jagger and Richards, and they're our version of it. So my first note in here was they're our iconic rock and roll band that has stood the test of time and made relevant music over decades.
I've seen Aerosmith in different decades, and they bring it every time. Like
And-
they really do.
I mean, I wrote down that they've been influenced by everybody who came before them, and they've influenced everybody who came after them. And there's so many the different eras where there was the drug era, the 70s. They're a bar band. They're you go in to shoot pool somewhere, and they're just shredding on the stage. And then they got clean, and they had Permanent Vacation and Pump, and it was just like hits. And in the 90s, were like, I think they got really soft with the Armageddon soundtrack and stuff.
Well, they made a lot of money. Like,
And they
Dolly
got-
Parton made a lot of money off
that
that
song. They didn't write that song. They didn't write many songs after Pump. They had a lot of help writing songs, which is great. Desmond Child wrote a bunch of songs with them. He's a great lyricist. I read Joe Perry's book last summer, and it's really good. Man, he really puts down Steven Tyler. Like he just
They're another like
they
two
just
guys
go
that
at
just-
each
right.
other. those two guys talking back to each other. It's like Abbott and Costello. Steve Tyler's like, and Joe Perry's like, oh my God, this guy's just all the time.
And the scarfs around the mic stand, like if you know what that is, if you see it. Walk This Way with Run DMC was like the beginning of all that crossover stuff.
They were always like one of the first bands to try something new.
Sure.
Yeah.
They had a video game before anybody had a video game.
Yeah.
They had a Disney ride.
Yeah.
Before anybody. It's still there. They're definitely a great American band.
Going back to like the 90s, not a grunge band, not this. Aerosmith, Get a Grip. What other pop rock album was bigger than that album? You had Crying on that album. You had Living on the Edge on that album. You had Crazy. You had that
amazing,
crazy. Their
amazing.
Their videos were huge. I mean, it was a little weird that he had his daughter get the strip dance from Alicia Silverstone.
But then she
thought it was
did an impersonation of him. You know,
it was sexy.
Yeah, but in my opinion, Get a Grip. That wasn't like a grunge or hip hop or violent. Like you want to talk about a good party album that everybody bought.
It was definitely part of everybody's CD collection.
Yeah. I put on the, I went back and listened to 9 Lives from like 97.
Yeah, I listened to
that. And
Pink?
I was like the
Hole in My Soul's a great jazz.
Falling in Love is Hard on the Knees.
Yeah.
And that was the year that they got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The opening beat of the opening track is just like he just does this like the Steven Tyler shriek that I won't even try to do because people are going to be listening to us. It's just heavy and it's like those moments. And it's like, dude, that is like you stomp on the gas when you hear that.
God,
yeah, let's go.
I'm a big fan of 70s Aerosmith.
Yeah, it's great.
Toys in the Attic was one of my first Aerosmith 70s albums. I had Pump and then I went back and got Toys in the Attic, and it really, at a young age, hit me in a bluesy kind of rock way.
I didn't listen to a lot of their older stuff, and when I started diving into it recently, Toys in the Attic, Back in the Saddle, I like Mama Kin, I was like Eat the Rich. This stuff is all fantastic.
They were like the Guns N' Roses, of our generation, like that dirty rock and roll. That was Aerosmith. They were
like if you walked into here and they could be sitting in the corner playing in any bar. Any neighborhood dive bar across America.
Did you ever listen to Rocks? That's their best 70s album.
Okay.
Put that on your list.
All right.
It's a great album. It's down and dirty. Aerosmith. They're still like drugging around, so they were writing edgy songs instead of love songs.
Yeah.
But Aerosmith's a great pick.
But Aerosmith, Ryan brought it up to me before the COVID happened. Like Aerosmith was going to have their 50th anniversary concert. Where was it going to be?
Aerosmith was having their 50th anniversary concert at Fenway.
And I was like, oh, really, man? I don't really want to go see Aerosmith again.
And I was like, no, we are going.
We were going to go see them in Atlantic City last year.
Yeah.
And the tickets were like $300.
Yeah.
But
they want their money.
Coke is expensive.
Yeah. But to go see Aerosmith in Fenway, I'm like, yeah, I'd pay the money and I take the trip and I'm with Ryan, so we're going to have a good time.
That would have been such a good time.
Yeah. And another one of those, like with the concert, go see them because
they're not going to be around
they're
forever.
old. And you're losing a year.
Everybody should take this COVID thing for,
Yeah.
And I think they have one of the most underrated guitar players in rock and roll, Brad Wilford.
Sure.
That guy is a monster, and nobody ever gives him any love. So, Brad, if you're listening, I'm giving you mad love.
But again, they've been together for a million years. They have more drama than you can think of. Steven Tyler on American Idol, that rubbed me the wrong way. So
that was great.
Yeah.
Good for him.
I guess so. He's still relevant. But then they got rid of him. Then Joe Perry's like, oh, you're too focused on this TV show, so we're not going to do anything.
For me, it was a little bit too much was when he was doing Burger King commercials.
Was he in a Burger King commercial?
He was in a Burger King commercial selling like chicken fries or whatever the hell they had at that time.
He's trying to cash in before it's too late.
You see the commercials or the pictures of him now, and you're like, oh, he looks like
somebody's old crazy.
Jennifer Aniston went on had one too many.
Yeah. I just watched him on Joe Rogan the other night, and he's a great interview. He just, whatever he's talking with, and just like see him how he's so into talking to whoever.
He's been on like Howard Stern a lot.
Yeah.
And he's great just talking about like music and he'll be like, yeah, dude, we don't even try to write lyrics. If it just gets me to go blah, 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 and that's what I do because it just fits the beat and that's what we're doing.
I have a friend that works down at the stagehand growing up at the Spectrum, he worked down there. And he said one of the nicest guys out of all music he ever met was Steven Tyler.
Huh.
Like, he wanted to know what your name, he wanted to know what you did, kind of thing. And he came to town next time, and he like remembered you. He's just a really personal guy.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the list of hits too. I mean, every one of these that we had, I wrote down notable songs, and I think they had the longest one out of everybody. Dude Looks Like a Lady, Ragdoll, Angel,
Decades,
Jamie's Got a
different
Gun,
decades.
Living
of
on the
hits.
Edge, The Other Side, Crying, Amazing, Don't Want to Miss a Thing, Sweet Emote, just on and
It
on,
goes
and
on
like,
and on
and
and
just
on.
different eras.
And they
It was-
did the Run DMC
Yeah.
thing. So
Groundbreaking. I think that was my first taste of Aerosmith is with Run DMC on MTV. And then not too long after that, Ragdoll came out. And I was like, this band.
Isn't
And then you realize that, you know, they're singing like "Dude Looks Like a Lady."
isn't that supposed to be about Motley Crue?
supposed to be about Vince Neil?
Vince Neil? That's what I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I heard that before. I
Yeah.
definitely heard that before.
I love Aerosmith. I always
Yeah.
have. They are an American rock and roll
Sure,
band.
they're still doing it.
All right. So let's take a break. Let's do a little bit of a commercial, and we'll come back and we'll pick it up with on the second half with our top three. This episode of the Prisoners of Rock and Roll is brought to you by McCusker's Tavern, located at 17th and Shunk Streets in South Philadelphia. McCusker's Tavern has been in business for more than 50 years, making it the oldest bar west of Broad Street and a city known for its neighborhood watering holes. Minutes from the sports stadium, McCusker's is a great place to stop in for a few beers before or after a game or a concert. There's a reason why everyone from Philadelphia Magazine to Playboy have ranked it as one of the best dive bars in the city. Music is such an important part of McCusker's Tavern that we're actually recording this episode from there right now. They're currently closed due to the pandemic, but miss everyone and hope to see them soon. In the meantime, check them out on Facebook. That's McCusker's Tavern. All right, we are back. I'm going to open another PBR.
Nice.
And we are getting into the top three. So this is where the good stuff starts, right?
We were just saying we had a little break, and we were all saying how we were holding back on some of the bands that were picked in each other, our top.
Didn't want to keep blowing each other up. And
Yeah, I had a few things to say, but I didn't want to say it on the air.
You should have let it fly.
No, I don't want to be that.
All right.
I don't want to be that guy.
That's why I like you.
Yo,
You're a
guys
glass,
on the Muppets.
You're a glass half full kind of person.
Yeah, I'll
so.
just talk shit after everything's over.
All right, well, let's hear your number three, and we'll talk shit about that.
All right. My number 3, Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Number 3 for me. The Crickets sold 5 billion records before Buddy Holly died.
5 billion?
5 billion records before he died.
Oh, I thought you just made that up.
No.
You're like, they sold a zillion, billion, trillion,
Yeah.
gazillion records.
No. 5 billion records he sold before he died.
How's that possible?
From 52 to 59, he recorded 85 songs in his short career. He influenced a lot of bands. Before he died, he was 22 years old. He was already in the UK. He was already in Australia. He was all over the world. When he traveled to England, he was on the BBC, and there was 2 young guys watching and wanted to form a band, and John and Paul. They looked at Buddy Holly and they said, "Look, John, he has glasses just like you. You can totally be a rock star just like Buddy Holly."
The Crickets got their name. The Beatles
did, yeah.
took their name from
Yeah,
as an
Crickets.
homage to the
Yeah.
Crickets.
Yeah, it was along with they couldn't find a cricket in their recording studio. It was distracting them, and Buddy kept on hearing it, and they had to stop, and they went through the chicken wire and everything they did. The good old boys record with that down there, and they found the cricket. They were like, "Let's call it the cricket."
Yeah, there's one of their songs. They said you can hear it chirping in the
yeah.
background.
His first song he did, "That'll Be the Day," was just a demo. It was so hot that the producers were like, go put this out now. He's like, "No, that's just my demo." They didn't even ask him to play it on the radio. We don't even know who this is, but here it is. Very influential. After he died, the Rolling Stone had a hit with "Fade Away."
The Dead, right?
Yeah,
that's
The
a
Dead
core of
does
the
"Fade
Dead.
Away" also.
Springsteen
Everybody.
had a big cover of that in the 70s. He played it a lot.
Buddy Holly is the definition of rock and roll for that era. Like, okay, you got Elvis Presley, you got Jerry Lee Lewis, and then you have Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly brought...
He wrote his own songs.
He wrote his own songs. Just the engineering thing. You talk about
He was
Eddie
a
Van
whiz.
Halen. You talk about Eddie Van Halen, Les Paul, and this and that. Buddy Holly created a lot of stuff. He recorded a lot of
He
stuff.
produced a lot of his own stuff too. He
He's
had a
genius.
vision and
Absolutely genius. A couple of years ago, or I'm sorry, not a couple of years ago, before the COVID, there was this traveling hologram show. And I was, you know,
Did you go?
No, I wanted to go. I brought it up to Ryan. It wasn't cheap to go.
It was really expensive.
It was in Collingswood.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
at that theater. I would like to go in that theater. And it was just
It was
like,
like him and Roy Orbison.
yeah.
Not for $100 though.
No, but it was just like, oh man, this would have been super cool to see because I've always been a big fan. And how could you not be? You know, he created like Rocker Bobby Sox, man. Like the day the music died, you know,
Well,
songs
that's
were
the
written
thing.
down.
If you know, you ever listen to that song, Don McLean's song, American Pie, is about Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper dying on December 31st, 1959. They were in a plane crash, and it's the day the music died, literally.
That was the first tragic
Tragedy.
moment in American rock and roll.
Yeah.
And how much music did we get deprived of by that dude dying at 22 years old?
Sure.
You know, like how influential he was in such a short amount of time.
Sure.
He was very groundbreaking for being so young that he was. And he just had something about him, you know,
He's so dorky and nerdy,
I think.
but he's cooler than you. He's cooler than all
he's
of us.
cooler
Oh,
than-
absolutely.
Yeah. I think Weezer kind of stole
Yeah,
his gig.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I like Weezer.
Now they can go jump off the cliff.
So what year did he die?
He died in 1959.
1959.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is before the Beatles. This is before the Rolling Stones.
And that whole story too around like how he like what happened that night. So they were on that the Winter Dance Party tour, and they called it the Tour from Hell.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because they were like
On the bus.
We'll go here, we'll go here,
Yeah.
we'll go, and it was like this bumpy, you know, like 1950s bus, and
But
it
a
was
lot-
like Waylon Jennings.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they flipped a coin to who was going to get on the Waylon
Yeah.
Jennings.
Whaling said, "I hope your plane crashes."
Yeah, and he said he
Holy
never.
shit.
And even like I mean, the Big Bopper kind of gets written off.
Well,
as, like,
he was
the-
just a radio DJ at the moment, and he had a hit. He was like he was an older.
Yeah, he was an
dude.
older dude. But you know what, man? Like I had one day that I put on some of his stuff on Spotify, and
Chantilly
I went pretty far down the rabbit hole. I couldn't. If you told me I would win the Publishers Clearinghouse if I could name 3 songs by the Big Bopper.
Sure.
I couldn't do it.
No, I couldn't do
But
it.
I went down the rabbit hole with the stuff, and I was like, yeah, there's some cool stuff there
No,
that
he
just
definitely
it's
had a
just been
gimmick.
lost.
He had a
And-
gimmick. It was great.
And Richie Valens was what? He was 17 when he died.
I thought he might have been a little bit older than that. But he died in like, okay, so Buddy Holly died in 59, you said?
Buddy Holly died December 31st, 1959.
Okay, so like let's look at the shock of America when it happens because like America was very cradled at that point,
At that
like,
time.
at that time, and then after that, Kennedy gets shot, and that kind of changed the world also, or it happened before
5-6 years later.
5, yeah, but this is all before like the Beatles.
This is before Innocence died. The
Yeah.
end of the Innocence was when,
But it's just like what the world changed so much from 1959. When did the Beatles come over? 1962,
1964.
64. Look how much music changed from that. And Buddy Holly had a huge influence on that change.
On everybody. I think if you put a Buddy Holly song onto a garage band, so you pick 2 of these songs and play, they could find the 2 songs.
When the Beatles played the Ed Sullivan Theater, which is like one of the most iconic live performances of all time, they said that when they got on the stage and they played a song and then they went to commercial break, they turned to Ed Sullivan and were like, "This is where Buddy Holly played, right?"
Yeah.
Sure.
And you can see like there's videos on YouTube of them playing on that Ed Sullivan Theater, and it's just
They're geeking out.
it's just awesome. It's just so cool.
Yeah,
like
Buddy
the
Holly.
nerdiness and
Yeah.
it's simple music. Peggy Sue might have 30 different words in the entire song.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
the lyrics are so simple.
Sure.
They rock and roll. You don't get more rock and roll than that. If you want to sit home one night and you ever watch the Buddy Holly story?
Yeah, with Gary Busey.
Man, he's so good in that movie. I mean, he's better than the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, his,
Sure, yeah.
his acting.
He was
way
the
better
first. They
than
were the
movie.
first white band to ever play the Apollo Theater. Right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
in the movie, right?
Yeah,
get up
they,
and-
they walked out and they were like, "You better play something good, boy."
Well, that's like funny. Like Gary Busey played Buddy Holly in the movie. Gary Busey bought a pair of Buddy Holly glasses. Like
I
that
saw
went for
him
auction.
Arsenio Hall clip the other night that he had those glasses on.
Yeah.
I heard this whole story about those glasses. So he died in the plane crash, and his glasses just kind of like disappeared.
They probably shattered. in a
And
million
no,
pieces.
they somebody found them. They put them in a drawer, like a sheriff put them in a courthouse, and the box was like mislabeled. And they found them in like 1980.
Wow.
And they were like, "Holy shit, we found it." They was with I think it was the Big Bopper's like watch, and his watch was still ticking.
I think I've heard that before. I heard that.
And they
before.
went to give the glasses back to his parents, and his widow wound up suing each other in court
Wow.
over the glasses. And the widow had them, and she donated them. There's a Buddy Holly Center in Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah, I saw
That's where they're on display. But the fact that those like survived that terrible plane crash is just like, his glasses are one of the most like iconic like 50s thing.
Just the glasses.
If you go out to the crash site, there is a little memorial thing, and to see where it's at, there's a pair of black. Big black
there's like on a stand, like
Yeah.
a little, yeah.
I
Which
remember,
was a very crazy thing that I saw on a documentary about that crash is they found a gun, and they were saying maybe the gun went off accidentally and shot.
No, I've never heard that.
And shot the pilot, and it went down. Or I heard also like Buddy was like, "Oh, let me fly the plane for a while." Oh yeah, good old boy, get up here and fly the plane. I heard that.
I've never
story.
heard that either.
it was a really bad blizzard too. They were flying.
Yeah.
In. They were
They're
in really
crazy
bad
to
weather.
do that. I'm very intrigued with the Buddy Holly story.
We go on vacations. Me and Ryan go on vacations, like just to go. Like usually it's a concert or the Rock and Roll of Fame or this or that. Ryan said to me not too long ago, "Man, we should really go out to where they crashed and go to
A pilgrimage.
Go for a pilgrimage." And the theater that his last show at, they still have shows there.
Yeah, I can't. I don't remember the name of it.
But that would be something dynamite to go do. Go see a show there.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully
I like-
something period at that period.
You know, I before I get on a plane, I sit down
Yeah,
and I go,
do the same thing.
Pig Sue,
Yep.
Pig Sue, playing the Buddy Holly to get me to my point A to point B.
One time I was on a plane with Anne, my girlfriend Anna, and the turbulence started going off. So I started singing La Bamba. She's like, "Will you stop it?" So
Cool, as Bruce says. That's I would have to say Buddy Holly.
That's
yeah,
a
I
great,
agree with
that's a great
That's
pick.
a great pick.
Thank you.
All right, Doug, what you got? Number 3.
Number 3, I had Metallica. So Metallica, big influence on, again, they're our generation of the Rolling Stones, and
They're one of the greatest bands, American bands.
one thing to go back on that we need to talk about Metallica really fast. Kirk Hammett, right after he recorded Kill Them All, he went and took guitar lessons from Joe Satriani.
That's a major play.
So here's a band.
Satriani is a dude that, if you're not really into music, you have no idea who he is.
Yeah.
If
But
you're not,
he-
if you're not like
He's
way into
flirted
guitar,
in this episode twice now,
Yeah.
because I was mentioned like Chickenfoot, the
Sure.
band with
and he's in that.
with
Yeah.
Hagar. He's
Yeah.
in that with Chad Smith from the Red Hot
Yeah.
Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Hagar, there's
Satriani.
Michael Anthony,
Yeah.
Satriani, and Chad Smith, and then
that band
and then
did
now
really well.
it was
Yeah.
a decent album.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just always think Joe Satriani's good by himself and not with a band. It's hard for me to try to hear him do hooks.
It's a little much. It's like
Yeah.
what's that? Yingy Mouse theme?
Yang Wei. Ying
like
Wei.
there's some dudes that are like they're so like I'm too stupid to understand and appreciate the music. Like he's like, you're too good. My brain just can't even understand it.
But like with Metallica, one thing, what I'm saying with that statement with Kirk Hammett, I believe that especially more now than ever, that this band is not even close to stopping, and they're going to get better and better and better. Again, with Rob in the band, there's rumors that they're going to have an album out in the next year and a half, and I can't wait to hear it.
No.
Because their last album, Hardwire, if you have not listened to it, listen to it. It's their best album they made since the Black Album, and a lot of people don't like the Black Album.
Well, I think they're a bunch of posers anyway.
Who, Metallica?
No, the people who say they don't like the Black Album.
Yeah.
Is that the album when like people, the dudes that wore the jean jackets and the Kill 'Em All shirt, like that?
Totally.
Is that when Metallica got soft, like Unforgiven? And
Yeah, yeah. And like everybody was crying because they lost their edge. They wrote like Nothing Else Matters.
Remember how everybody was like, "Oh my God, they wrote a ballad."
You know what I took harder? When they wrote a country song. They wrote a country song on like one of the Fuel or Load or one of these albums. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah, they had a lot
Bruce
of
is
bad
smiling.
ideas.
Like,
They had a lot. No, they
Like,
drank
what-
a lot.
Why do you got to
Yeah.
put them in a box? Like if they want to do something
Yeah,
different,
no,
like
and they can.
I just think maybe for a good 10 years they had the wrong people around them.
Sure.
I thought they stuck with Bob Rock way too long.
Absolutely.
Bob Rock produced the Black Album.
They let him play
Load,
bass,
Reload.
dude.
They did the Monster whatever album.
yeah, you
Some kind of
mentioned that in the
monster.
last.
They let him play
in the Motley
bass.
Crue out episode.
I hope he didn't get royalties for that, just
No.
like double dipping. You know, because
James Hetfield didn't want to work with him anymore. Like he was tired of.
you did it all with him.
he was tired of him like making him do things.
Yeah, you can only go so far creativity with how many albums did they do with him? You can only go so far. Bring in fresh blood.
But his sound.
But they did an album with Rick Rubin, and Rick was trying to get his name taken off the album
Kirk Hammett said he didn't even work on the album. He said he'd come in, lay on the couch.
Yeah, I hear a lot of bad things about
And
Rick
that's
Rubin.
it.
He's just this dude that lays on the couch and. Somebody passes him a bong and he hits it and he just listens and then he leaves. You don't see him for like another 6 months.
You're doing a good job. Make it more exciting.
Yeah.
Metallica, every time I see them, they bring it. I have a Metallica tattoo.
Yep.
I know what you're saying. They were on my list earlier in the show. Lars Ulrich, great drummer.
You always said he's your Michael Jordan.
He is my Michael Jordan. When I first heard one as a kid, I was like, what is that double bass pedal? I was like, only a Magic dude could do that. And as I got older, I learned the technique and I still can't do it.
And even you think of the music that you're listening to, like when you discover Metallica, you're still like in that hair band 80s thing. Who's really playing like double bass like that? You never heard anything like that.
No,
you never listened to Slayer at that point. You never listened to like Exodus or
no. At 13 years old and hearing one, and the rest of the Justice for album was totally opening my mind to a lot of things. And by the time the Black Album came out, I was like, oh, this is pretty soft compared to that Justice for All album. But then, let's talk about Master of Puppets and how that is just a work of art.
Sure.
From the beginning of the album to the end of the album. Cliff Burton, can't say enough about how much he brought music theory into that band.
He did. And he brought that to James. He showed James Hetfield music theory. I couldn't agree with you more. Like Cliff Burton is up on my list of bass players and just magic, one guy to possess, and comes from a great background, great family. His dad just passed away a couple of years or last year, and he just appeared to be such a
he's very proud of his son.
Very proud of his son, and like you're banging your head, Cliff. You're playing this metal music and this and that, and
he'd go home and listen to Mozart.
Yeah,
be like,
and Cliff Burton just came from a great support system, and
by the end of he was a big REM fan.
Cliff Burton was
a big REM fan. I remember reading an article, and he said, I think it was Kirk. He said, "Yeah, I remember standing at the payphone somewhere overseas, and he wanted to call his friend because he knew he was going to the REM show, and he wanted to see what songs were played, and he was a really big fan of
Never
REM.
heard that.
Yeah,
that's just shocking.
I know.
That's
REM
really
is such a bad band.
They're horrible.
They are awful.
I hope you don't have them on your list, Bruce.
Bruce loves them.
No, they were on, I don't know, something I was researching this and I was Googling like greatest American rock and roll band. It might have been The Guardian or it was some British newspaper called them the greatest American rock and roll band of all time. And
REM?
Yeah. I said one of our potential shows would be, what's the first show you've ever seen? What was the last show you saw? What's the best show you saw? And the worst show you saw? And sorry, listeners, REM is the worst concert I've ever seen.
They're the worst band ever.
Hands down.
Yeah.
I hate Michael Stipes. Remember that year he was on the MTV Awards and he took every time they won an award for Losing My Religion, he had a different shirt on, like AIDS awareness, homeless awareness.
Oh, yeah.
And I like that song a lot. That album I really
was
enjoyed.
That Monster?
No, it was Out of Time.
Okay.
Monster was the show the tour.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the grumpy old man, but I was like, right, we're going to stop now and do another episode on an hour and a half of why REM sucks.
Where do I start?
Yeah.
Let's start with the drummer.
We can when we all die and go to hell and they're playing Shiny Happy People.
They're just a bunch of nerds, man.
Yeah.
Like they're just
they're just the hipsters of the hipsters.
Yeah. But Cliff Burton liked them, so like nobody's
that's
perfect.
true.
Nobody's
you can
perfect.
look it up. You can look
Nobody's
it up.
perfect.
Look where that got him.
That's bad.
Bam! Wow. Making Cliff Burton jokes. You can't do that in McCuskers. We got a picture of him right here. We're sitting, my friend Jude painted that picture of Cliff, hangs up on the wall in McCuskers.
Come and check it out.
Yeah, right now. We're closed.
We're closed.
But we're hanging out at McCuskers. We're having a good time. We miss everybody. We will be back.
Come and see us when we open.
So my number 3 is the Ramones.
Awesome.
They were not a band. They were a cultural movement.
Absolutely.
There is the holy trinity of punk music.
I agree.
The Clash, the Sex Pistols, and the Ramones. and only one of them is ours.
Yeah.
Only one of them is American.
The Ramones started it all.
At a time when you had Yes and all these progressive bands and their 7-minute songs and their fine musicianship, the Ramones were singing about sniffing glue. They had they sounded amateurish on purpose.
Yeah.
They sounded like they were not good musicians. They all had that.
They weren't. They didn't even know how to play their
didn't.
albums on
And
those
they-
first records.
They said they stink. They said it themselves. We stink.
They made an entire career on 4 chords.
They're
Like
a
And they're
great
three
band.
chords.
And they're iconic.
Right.
And
And in the time I finished talking about them, we could have played 37 Ramones songs in a row.
I remember when I bought their greatest hits album on South Street at Tower Records, and I looked at the side A on the tape. I'm like, holy shit, there's 20 songs on the first
Right.
side.
They weren't angry. Like the Sex Pistols were just angry,
Yeah.
angry
they
dudes.
gave punk a bad name, the
And-
Sex Pistols.
And
They
the
couldn't-
and the Clash was like, the Clash is fantastic.
but the Clash is like
but they were also like reggae.
musically like
yeah,
amazing.
they're the smartest band in
Yeah.
rock and roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We could do a whole thing
Yeah,
on
the
Joe
Clash.
Strummer
Yeah.
and the Clash.
Yeah.
but the Ramones were just almost like the middle of the road of the punk music, and the uniform of the black jeans and the black jackets and the hair
Sure.
and the glasses and
The uniform.
they were never a success. Like they never sold
No.
many albums. They do a friggin' amazing cover of the Spider-Man theme.
Yeah, I remember that came
Yeah,
out.
it's
I remember
awesome.
that came out. Don't Bury Me in a Pet Cemetery
Yeah,
and all
Pet
that.
Sematary.
I think the only thing those guys could have been was rock stars. They were just 4 guys that couldn't do anything. They couldn't even play their instruments, but made one of the greatest albums of all time.
That's like, look at Dee Dee. He was a mess.
But
Like
he
53rd on 3rd. It's about him doing all that.
Yeah.
You know, he's
I
a
mean-
mess.
You think of everything that Elvis did to the culture of rock and roll. The look,
Yeah.
the sound, the image. The Ramones did the exact same
Bizarre
thing for
world.
punk
Like
music.
it's completely opposite.
But they had the same influence, but just on, like, if you turn the log over, it's on the other side.
Johnny was like ran that band. Dee Dee, when the Dolls came out, or the Dolls were out, and he wanted to start wearing more shiny clothes and glam. And
Who,
they're
Dee Dee?
like, nah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Johnny was like, nope, this is what we're wearing. And this is your uniform, and you better have it on in every show. And they killed it. They had an image.
They started
They're
a
smart.
revolution.
Yeah.
They were exactly what the 70s needed at the
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you have the Eagles and
Yeah, I
Yes
hate
and
the
those
Eagles,
bands,
dude.
you and the Big Lebowski, they were on my short list.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I'm with you.
And the fact that they didn't give a shit what they sounded like.
No.
They didn't care.
It worked, though.
I think
And-
I think a lot of their production in the early was Marky Ramone, their drummer.
Sure.
He knew what they wanted it to sound like. He was like, I got the sound in my head. They don't give him any love though. Dee Dee said that, give me a break, that if he thinks he's a big part of the Ramones, he's sadly mistaken.
Well, he got that job. He was like working on their album, and like I don't even think he played the drums. And
No,
he
he
just
played drums on that album.
no, he played drums on that album, but he wasn't a drummer. Like he was.
No,
like,
you're right.
And he just went and look. Well, I'll just play. They're
like,
auditioning
who's gonna-
drummers. He's like, well, I can play drums better than these guys.
That's
so
what these guys were.
Yeah.
None of them knew how to play their instrument.
I'm not an autograph person at all. I have 2 people I've ever asked for their autograph my entire life. One is Springsteen.
Nice.
And the other one I have is Marky Ramone.
Nice.
I got
I have
Marky
Marky
Ramone,
Ramone. It was at the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market. We're going to check it out. That's Marky Ramone. I don't care if I got to pay $40 to talk to him for 5 minutes.
Money well
and I got to
spent.
hang it in my bar in my pub shed.
Yeah.
It's just awesome.
Yeah, I met him at a Comic-Con. I gave him some props, and he was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
But that's like one band that I regret, and I'll never see because they're all dead.
They are all dead. Well,
And it's a bummer.
Marky's still alive.
Yeah, but like
yeah.
unless it's some
Band
kind
you-
of cool tribute Ramones band that he did, like kind of like Ringo Starr does, like goes out there and plays the
Right.
drum. And
If they do the
Yeah.
hologram,
yeah.
But do you remember like how many times they came around a year? They were always. It seemed like they were always in Philly.
Yeah.
The Ramones. They were always here. I was like,
And you
know
just
what?
said that.
I'll
you
catch them
just
next
said, "Do you
time."
remember?" And I just thought of, "Do you remember Rock and Roll High School?"
Yeah.
Like I thought you were starting to do the lyrics. 2 interesting things out of them. One was they were the icon of like CBGBs
Sure.
in
Oh,
New York.
The right place, the right time.
And-
Both of them.
Yeah, CBGB's is now a John Varvatos clothing store.
I've been there.
Yeah,
And
we've
I
been
was,
there.
I was going through the Newark airport to fly somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's a restaurant.
Yeah.
And my poor wife had to hear me like stop. It was almost like in Pulp Fiction when Ving Rhames is walking across the street and he stops
like,
and
"What
sees
the-"
it. He's like, motherfucker. I probably had to edit this out too. But I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the
No.
place that like the Velvet Underground sang heroin.
Yeah.
And now I can go, it's like I can go buy a t-shirt for my kids.
Yeah,
I was
it's a bummer.
I was lucky enough that I got to go there when it was still a club.
When the toilet was overflowing.
Yeah,
up to your
I got
knees.
a Sharpie marker and tagged everything around, and
We did.
we were intoxicated. It was the middle of the afternoon. It was like 6 o'clock.
We left the Yankees game.
And we went to CBGB's, and maybe like 2-3 weeks later, they were closed out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was tragic.
It was
the,
tragic.
The owner was there when we walked in, and
Yeah.
I didn't know this until a couple years ago. Our buddy who we went with, he's like, "Man, that was I forget his name." But he was there when we walked in, and we were there probably like a year before they closed. So me and Ryan and our buddy were like, "Man, we could throw together a punk band and play this place." You know, our buddy owned the bar. We owned the bar. We could fill like 2 buses up, go up there, sell out, and just write 15 punk songs in 10 minutes and come home. The Ramones, they're legendary. They're America.
I want to
just
say
as much as Buddy Holly.
I just want to say F. Sid Vicious, D.D. Ramone, baby.
My last point was, as I was going through their catalog listening, I found a cover of Good Rockin' Tonight, the Elvis song, that was by Johnny Ramone, Dee Dee Ramone, and Lemmy from Motorhead was singing on it. It's amazing.
Amazingly good, or just
It's amazing.
Does it sound like that Saturday Night Live skit with singing Christmas carols?
Yeah,
With-
pretty much.
What was it? Frankenstein,
Yeah.
the Mummy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. I was like, this is so terrible, but it's so punk rock. It's awesome.
But his cover of a Beautiful World,
Yeah,
Dude.
Yeah, the Louis
Who?
Armstrong, Joey
dude, that's
Ramone,
great.
Who?
Joey Ramone,
Joey Ramone.
Okay, I didn't hear you say Joey Ramone. You
Yeah,
said
I
him.
didn't. I said his. But
thinking Lemmy.
yeah. But that's iconic. It was at the end of Casino, I think it was, or Goodfellas, or one of those.
It was towards the end of his life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You know, it was like one of the. I remember listening to it on a Christmas day, and he died like right before then. I'm like, man, he really hit a home run with this.
I think he lived a really lonely. He had a lonely end of his life.
yeah,
Yeah.
I heard that too.
It's a shame.
All right, so let's move on. We got our top 2. We are getting near the pinnacle here. Ryan, what do you got for number 2?
Number 2, I think you guys are going to be kind of surprised and ask me why. My number 2 is the Beach Boys.
It's understandable.
Let's just name some songs here. Good Vibrations, Help Me Rhonda, Surfing USA, Wouldn't It Be Nice, California Girls, Don't Worry Baby, Barbara Ann, In My Room, and of course, Kokomo.
John Stamos.
And John Stamos. You know, they were the California sound. They were before the Beatles, but they totally took influence from the Beatles. Even they were a veteran band.
Nobody did harmonies like the Beach Boys.
No.
Nobody did before. Nobody has done after. You can say Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young were really tight 3-part harmonies. They're not even close to what the Beach Boys did.
Brian Wilson was one of the greatest producers, band members that you could think of. You ever listen to Pet Sounds?
Absolutely.
One of
It's
the-
a perfect out, like
it's-
front to back. It's an absolutely perfect
it's
album.
unbelievable.
And they made that album because of Sgt. Pepper's. He like.
No.
Oh
No?
No. They made that album from Rubber Soul. They heard Rubber Soul and they were like, holy shit, we got to make a better album than this. So Brian Wilson's like, if you guys want to make a good album, you guys get out of the recording studio and let me make an album.
Wasn't it the whole like he was in his house and he had like sand dumped
That
on
was
his living
later on.
room?
That was later on.
when
He
he
made-
was like going off the rails.
He made Pet Sounds at the Capitol Records.
They're one of those bands that nobody has ever sounded like them.
Did you know it was the Wrecking Crew playing on that whole album?
Did not.
Yeah, they didn't play any of their instrument in the beginning.
They did all the vocals, like the Beach
Yeah.
Boys all came
Yeah.
in and
Yeah.
they did the vocals.
But instrument wise, they didn't play any of their. But nobody
you know,
did back
they,
then.
They, you know, you put the Beach Boys on. I don't care how old you are. If you're a toddler to someone that's like 85 years old that's barely getting around on a walker, dude, they're going to dance. You're going to go to a no shower happy hour and pay Barbara Ann on there. Those girls are going to go wild. Everybody, the Beach Boys, man, they are America.
Sure.
You know?
I was in Disney World a couple of years, more than a couple of years ago, probably like 15 years ago. So we're walking around. We're in Epcot. So they had this amphitheater down there. So we're walking around and I hear like this concert, this music going on. And I'm like, man, that sounds like Mike Love. So I walk up. It's the Beach Boys playing. I got to see the Beach Boys in Disney World.
Yeah, they're on that kind of like
Yeah, like,
amusement park,
Yeah, but-
supermarket
But
opening
dude, it's like
tour.
you were talking about a
Now they
magical
are.
experience.
Yeah.
You were talking about a magical experience. It was.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think they're a band that's forgotten about. Pet Sounds was one of the first concept albums. The music productions, the harmonies, everything about it. It was one of the first concept albums I was listening to the other night. And to me, the concept is love, of beginning love, going through the motions of being in a relationship, and then maybe it's a drag at the end of it.
I almost felt like their music was like the innocence of America before Nam and all that other kind of
Just the innocence of America.
that post World War II. Everybody's moving into the suburbs. Everybody's getting the white picket fence,
Yeah.
and life is good. America's great.
And I think their father saw this, and
Their father, he was a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
He really was. He hit Brian Wilson so hard on his right side ear. He hit him so hard, lost almost all 6% of his hearing.
Oh wow,
He was recording his whole life with one good ear.
wow. So he's on like the All Star Dads with Michael Jackson's
He was an
father.
all-star father.
Oh,
He
yeah.
sold all their royalties.
yeah, without him knowing, definitely abusive. He worked those kids like Joe Jackson worked his kids.
Yeah.
you know.
If you want to see what Brian Wilson, he was a schizophrenic. Sure. He really had bad mental problems. I think that's why he heard all those harmonies and everything. He would make those albums without anybody around him, and he'd bring in the Wrecking Crew and just lay down tracks. I was like, where are you getting this? He's like, it's from my head. And I'm convinced that he's hearing all these different voices in his head, and he put them on record.
That's a really cool point.
You know, there's a really great movie. It's called Love and Mercy, and John Cusack plays Brian Wilson, and it's about the recording of Pet Sounds, about how it drove him nuts to him with the controversial, the therapist he had that kept him underground for all those years. You know, it's a really great movie. It's on Amazon Prime.
I just recently watched it.
It's a
fantastic.
sad movie. It's a sad movie.
It's fantastic. Yeah, he was definitely abused by his father. His shrink took control of him.
He just wanted to make music.
I've always put him in the same bucket as Sid Barrett. Super talented dude and just
Lost it. I always hear, you know, being a genius and being a lunatic is our fine line between them.
yeah.
You can't say anything more about the Beach Boys. They are America. I agree with Ryan, what he said. That's a great pick. When we were growing up, that's all a lot of our childhood.
You put any of those Beach Boys songs on, the early stuff, like Surfing USA, you know, even though they stole riffs from Chuck Berry and just put all the surfing shit on top of it, that's okay. They gave them props, and they even said it. They said, yeah, we stole this from Chuck Berry. All the hot rod songs, to the surfing songs, to the chick songs, they are one of the greatest American rock and roll bands.
Yeah, that's a fantastic pick.
Thank you.
Doug, what you got number 2?
My number 2 pick, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Great band. They're a cornerstone of America. They had 14 albums, 80 million sold. They played 1,400 shows and won 3 Grammys. It's an amazing career that Tom Petty had just by himself, you know, from everything from the Traveling Wilburys to the producing end that he did. Tom Petty and Heartbreakers toured with Bob Dylan. They said it was one of the greatest experiences of their lives. Musically, Tom Petty said one of his favorite things was when he met Elvis Presley as a kid, and it made him want to be a musician.
I never knew that he met Elvis.
Elvis was like filming a movie in his town where
He was from like Jacksonville, right?
No, somewhere close to that.
It was like somewhere in Florida.
Yeah, and you think of the career that he had, who he worked with, and this and that, and you meet Elvis as a kid. You touched every end there is of rock and roll, and for him to be the iconic person that he wound up being is amazing. He's just, in my opinion, it was a very sad day when he died. I still say I'm still getting over it, and a lot of people still do.
Yeah, it's like gone too soon.
Yeah, but it's amazing. Like all the songs that he had like, example, American Girl, Breakdown, Don't Come Around Here More, The Waiting, and you can just keep on going on and on and on and on.
That one song from Silence of the Lambs, like every time I hear it, I keep thinking of like somebody's
Girl.
getting beat with a fake cast in the back of a van.
Are you a size 13?
Right, what are you, like a size 13? And you're getting thrown, every time you hear that song, somebody's getting thrown down a well. So he is the first one on the list that I'm embarrassed to say this that I saw in concert. And
wow. Everybody that we
all
talked
these
about?
bands that we've talked about, I haven't seen any of them in concert. And I'm always like, I've seen more people in concert than most people.
No.
I took my daughter to see him. She wanted tickets for Christmas, and we saw him on his last tour. And it was the first time her and I ever went to a concert together by
fantastic.
ourselves, without the family. And because my wife's not a huge fan of Tom Petty, she thinks his voice is a little monotone. We've said like 4 times today, and this going to see a band and take advantage of it. And I was so thankful that I went and saw him, because you'll never get the chance again.
Yeah. Man, all those songs. I've seen him a bunch of times. And one of the last times I saw him, he had Stevie Winwood opening up. Stevie Winwood, wrote "Give Me Some Lovin'." So at the set's going on, Stevie Winwood's leaving the stage. I'm like, oh my God, he didn't play "Give Me Some Lovin'."
I love Steve Winwood.
Yeah, here comes Tom Petty. Tom Petty's playing this set. The last song that brings Stevie Winwood out, it played "Give Me Some Lovin'." It was probably one of the top moments of concerts that I've ever
It's
seen.
awesome.
It was. I'm like, I can't believe I'm seeing this right now. It's like da-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na. It was rocking the whole Coors State Center, wherever we're called down there now.
I remember that show. I had to work that night. So we saw, me, Ryan, and our buddy Brian went to go see him a year or 2 prior to that. And a friend of ours got us tickets. We were right in front row. Or not front row, like the 10th row.
We're sitting next to Pierre.
Sitting next to Pierre Robert. And we're sitting there talking. Pierre's really super cool. I had a Ramon shirt on. Like, he's like, oh, that's great. And Steve Winwood is walking by us and sits us like 2 rows right in front of us.
He was sitting in the
the
crowd,
crowd.
to watch,
For Tom Petty.
And
They watched
everybody's
Tom
like,
Petty.
"Ooh."
to watch Tom Petty.
So Ryan later on, and I agree with Ryan, like "Give Me Some Lovin'" is one of the greatest songs ever written, hands down. So Ryan goes to the show, I was working the bar. He comes back, he's like, he might even call, like text me, dude, he's doing like "Give Me Some Lovin'" with Tom Petty. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
I think I have it on video on one of my old phones.
I would have loved to seen that. Like, it's just one of those moments.
It was. I was like, pay attention to this. I was like, remember this.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I saw Tom Petty.
I think Tom Petty is where my love of rock and roll started.
Okay.
Totally remember hearing Free Fallin' on the radio and just thinking, what is that? I need more of that. Who is this dude? After he died, I was thinking about this a lot. I'm like, I think that's where it all started for me. Mm-hmm. He was the ground zero of my love of rock and roll.
Absolutely.
That song was so good, Free Fallin'.
Yeah.
That whole album, Full Moon Fever, is such a great album.
I almost struggled to find the difference between that and the Greatest Hits album. Like, I was like,
Sure.
there's so many songs that are on both.
Well, to tell you the truth, Tom Petty is just a Tom Petty album. The Heartbreakers aren't on that record. So the Heartbreakers didn't want to play on it. They're like, this is like a... He's like, well, don't play on it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, boom, 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 song, huge iconic songs.
And then he's kind of like the throw-in the Traveling Wilburys. I think they were having dinner at Dylan's house or something, and they decided they were going to jam. And one of the guys, I think it was George Harrison, was like, "Oh, I left my guitar at my friend Tom's house. Let me give him a call." And
Conveniently.
right, and Tom Petty showed up. He's like, "Oh shit! Well, I just happened to bring my guitar too."
Sure.
You're in the band, son.
Yeah, and then it became this like absolutely fantastic. They're almost one of the forgotten supergroups of rock and roll.
But
How
can
do
you
you-
imagine being Tom Petty at that point? You have George Harrison, you have Roy Orbison, you have
Jeff Lynne.
Jeff Lynne, and Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Here you are growing up, listening to this music your whole life, and now you're one of them. Not like, I'm sure those guys don't roll like that or whatever.
How
but
do you not? Like,
I know, but like your mind has to blow.
There's a really cool. We're getting off track, but there's a really cool documentary that they put out when they reissued the Traveling Wilbury stuff, and they're all. It's so awesome how reverential they are to Roy Orbison. Like George Harrison is calling him Mr. Orbison.
Sure,
It's like,
yeah.
you're one of the Beatles, and you're like, oh, Mr. Orbison, it's
Yeah.
such a pleasure to get to play music with you. It's so cool.
But he even idolized. He was a hero of his.
Yeah.
You know, like Tom Petty had to sit around once in a while and just be like, "This is unreal. He met Elvis as a kid.
he's probably
you know?
he's probably in that room with the Wilburys and being like, I'm just going to be very quiet. Maybe they'll forget that I'm here, and
Right.
I'll make it on the album.
He's
Like,
like,
how do you stand in that room and like go say, hey, Dylan, write this lyric instead of this lyric? Oh, okay. They sat around and they would be like writing song lyrics, and they'd be like, no, forget
Yeah.
that lyric. Put this song in there. I would love to be there for that session.
Petty was like, I mean, he came out with that Greatest Hits album like the late 90s. And like you knew every single song on it. And then he went on to make even more good music after that. Wildflowers to me is just an absolutely beautiful rock and roll song. It's just, I have nothing else to say about it. It's just a beautiful song.
That's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody said to Tom Petty years ago, "Your songs are great, they're simple songs. He's like, let me see you try to do it. We're talking about like with the Wilburys and everything like that. What's great about that is he had all their respect as a songwriter, you know, and that's saying
point.
a lot, dude. That's just saying a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing career that he had. And it's sad every day that he's not here. And I don't think I'll ever get over it.
He left a good library of music behind with a lot of great videos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
His videos were like the videos on MTV.
we were talking about like ZZ Top being made by videos. Tom Petty. I mean, the video for "Don't Come Around Here No More" with the Alice in Wonderland was just, it was so cool. He had the giant hat, and then like the girls, the cake getting eaten, and it's just like super cool.
I think one of my first remembering of seeing a video or seeing Tom Petty was "You Got Lucky Babe," which was like a Mad Max world, and they found like old video games and everything like that. I love that song to begin with.
Yeah.
Like I think that's like the best thing you could like tell like your ex. Like, you got lucky when you found me.
I mean, the free fall and the girls, she's on the half pipe, like skating back and forth.
Yeah.
And Last Dance with Mary Jane, he's
Kim
dancing
Basinger.
with Kim Basinger. It's like, hey, I'm dancing with a dead chick. And it was like, oh, okay, cool.
There was a great album he did. It wasn't very popular. It was called Echo. If you ever it came out, like 97,
Yeah, I
98?
kind of like that album. I do like that album.
I think one of the singles off of it was "There's a Room at the Top at the World Tonight."
Yeah, it's a great song.
Oh,
That's a great song.
it's a great album. Just songwriting on point.
Yeah, super talented.
But yeah,
Cool.
that's my number 2.
So I am about to do my number 2. We have only had 2 bands that have been multiple so far.
Okay.
So we're at the betting line. So we have one more, we're over. And we're going over right now because my number 2 is Buddy Holly and the Crickets.
Very
Okay.
nice.
So
Awesome.
it was really hard for me to keep my mouth shut.
No, go for
So,
it. Go for it.
And I went super music nerd
Yeah.
on this.
I can understand why. I understand why.
If you go and Ryan, you were talking about the version of That'll Be the Day. And I wish we had a way we could put music in here and not get sued.
Yeah.
If there's a way to do that, if you go listen to the version of That'll Be the Day that he did by himself, and then you go play the version that he did with the Crickets, when he came back and said, no, I have a vision for how my music is going to sound. The first version is like, it's really tinny, and the second version has all the harmonies behind it. It's night and day.
Oh, wow.
How
I never heard
different. I'll play for you guys before we leave, and if I can find a way to splice it into this, I'll do that.
Okay.
It's really, really cool. Diving into just some of the innovations he had. So if you listen to Peggy Sue, the rolling drums, like it's like, you know,
Yeah.
dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, it's like a wipeout.
They were doing he had somebody that would rise the modulation, like the producer would move it up in the mix and move it down in the mix.
So it would feed up and feed back.
Yeah,
as
and he
the
said
song
like
went
sometimes
on.
he would play guitar and he would have somebody sitting on the floor next to him and moving the knobs on his electric
Wow.
guitar because they didn't know how to do any of the post production.
He
kind
knew
of
what
stuff.
he wanted though.
Yeah, he wrote his own music. Elvis was the face of like rock and roll at the time. Elvis didn't write his own stuff.
He only wrote one song.
Yeah.
Elvis only wrote one song. It was horrible.
Buddy Holly was one of the first artists to ever use double tracks, ever. The whole concept of a band with 2 guitars, a bass, and a drums comes from Buddy Holly. He had that kind of that hiccup kind of singing. Like I won't even try to replicate it.
Yeah.
But that was all him. The look, the glasses, the dorkiness. Elvis was all about
Cool. Being
he
cool.
he was attractive and the cool, and Buddy Holly was kind of like, I just want to party.
Yeah,
like
he
it was
just
just
wants to
we're
come
just gonna
out.
have some fun, and I don't have much else to say other than that we talked about. You know, the day the music died. We talked about the nerdiness. The amazingness is also like how much stuff he would do a song. And then the Crickets would do a song. And it was something the way his contract was structured, that they were on 2 separate labels.
Okay.
So they would alternate doing stuff, and sometimes they would do the same version twice just to get more royalties of it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
He died so young.
Yeah. And at
what he
22.
would- Yeah, imagine
yeah.
all the songs or all the other artists he would have found, he would have produced.
Yeah.
You know, he opened up for Elvis a couple times. And
Yeah, that's how he got started.
Yeah, and there was before they were trying to make him like Elvis. He's like, I'm not Elvis.
Yeah.
I'm Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm here to play Buddy Holly's song.
It was almost like he was almost like punk rock in his attitude.
was,
He's like,
yeah.
I had this vision, dude, and this is what we are doing.
Yeah.
And
I think that's why he was on my list also. Like you said, he was the punk rock.
Yeah.
and just everything changed because of him. I mean, when the Beatles are like, the first song that the Quarrymen recorded was a Buddy Holly song.
Yes, that was That'll Be the Day was the demo for the Beatles.
Like, the Hollies are named after Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
nothing else to say.
No, well, if you're out there and you've never listened to Buddy Holly, definitely put on his greatest hits and just rock out.
Just amazing.
Just
amazing
amazing
music.
He was American as American Pie.
All right, we are down to the number one.
Woo! We are down to number one.
What you got, Ryan?
All right, for my number one.
Who is it, and why is it Britney Spears?
Well, New Kids on the Block is my favorite, number one. My number one, I'm going to go with the Ramones. The Ramones is the greatest American rock and roll band ever fucking assembled. They sold 500,000 copies with the first album. Not bad for a little punk rock band. The rawness of the album influenced thousands of bands and all kinds of music. I think their sound had like a Phil Spector kind of sound, like on top of punk rock. They had these crazy little harmonies going together. They were like love songs. Joey Ramone was like, the only thing Joey could have been was a rock star. That's the only thing God intended him to be. The Ramones is a big deal to me growing up. It was one of the first songs I played with a band. Blitzkrieg Bop was like at my talent show at high school.
That was in my notes too, saying old soul sound in I Want to Be Your Boyfriend. And some of those old, like you could hear the throwback to other types of music.
The Ramones had 14 studio albums, 7 live albums, 16 compilation albums, 71 singles, 32 music videos, and 10 films.
10 films.
10 films. I know.
It's like Rock and Roll Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, Rock and Roll High School, and I can't say I've seen anything else by it.
I never got 11
I don't
films.
think Scorsese made it. Wrote it. Like again, these 4 guys that didn't know how to tune a guitar made one of the greatest albums ever made. That first Ramones record.
Sure.
Made a whole scene. Like those guys are the only ones. They were at the right place at the right time. As the universe aligns, those guys came together and they made a sound, and it was the Ramones.
Just looking at you and your body language as you're talking about them is cool as shit, because you can tell like how passionate you are about it is just awesome.
No, well, me and the Ramones go back a long way. I remember there was who was it? Skid Row. When we were like really young, they would cover. They would cover Ramones songs. I'm like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah.
And it totally like switched my mind. And I was like, what is this? Oh, this is punk rock. I was like, oh, this isn't like anything that I ever heard or seen. And the whole Ramones thing, I like to count myself as Ryan Ramone.
Sure.
Like, Doug is Dougie Ramone. We have a Joey Ramone way street sign hanging up in the bar. Unbelievable band.
It's funny you bring up, Phil Spector. Phil Spector did an album. Yeah. And it was a disaster. Like the whole story about holding him gunpoint and playing pinball. Because he's a psychotic person. He's in jail now for murder.
Right. He's also
Is
on
he
our,
dead?
the Prisoners of Rock and Roll, like They're Not Nice Dudes.
Yeah.
We're saying about Motley Crue.
He could have got away with one murder. He made all those songs. Come on.
Hey, man. He might have. You only heard about the one. He got sloppy in his old age.
Yeah, we start handing out our podcast Bad Dude Award.
Yeah.
He's a shitbag.
We should have that. But that was a disaster. And Phil Spector, he saw what you're saying with the Ramones. Like, those 4 guys can make that sound, and
the rawness of
it, and this and that, and he wanted the cash.
And they did it for decades.
Phil Spector didn't F up many things he touched other than the Beatles and the Ramones.
What did he do with the Beatles?
He did.
Well, he worked with John Lennon. He did the Imagine album.
He did Let It Be.
He did the original Let It Be, and then there's the Let It Be Naked.
Which is awesome.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Without and they unwound all his the wall of sound. It's worth checking out, like to dive into.
The Ramones, they weren't the greatest musicians around. Yeah, Johnny Ramone made one sound and it was down on the guitar.
Yeah,
it was the down chords. But they influenced so many bands. Let's start talking about them. There wouldn't be no Green Day. There wouldn't be no Offspring. There'd be no Sex Pistols. There would be no Clash. The Ramones started that whole scene over in England. The Sex Pistols went and saw them play with the Clash, and Johnny Rotten is such a pussy. He has such a big mouth. He was so scared to go in to meet the Ramones because he legit thought they were a gang and they were going to beat them
I love
up.
that story.
Like how punk rock is that? Like I'm afraid to go see this band, but I think they're going to beat the shit out of me.
Yeah, and they're just a bunch of nerds themselves. The Ramones.
Yeah,
You know?
they're just, in my opinion, they're the greatest American rock and roll
Yeah.
band. They were around for decades.
Yeah.
For me to say not the Grateful Dead or Fish
Yeah.
to be my favorite American rock and roll bands, I'm not, like I said, beginning of this, I'm not going to put them out there because what my taste isn't everybody's taste.
Mm-hmm.
But greatest American rock and roll band, the Ramones. Even Lemmy wrote a song for them.
Yeah.
Like I said before, everybody looks up to Sid Vicious being the punk bass rock guy. No. D.D. Ramone, baby.
Yeah,
D.D., he wrote all those songs. He was always 1, 2, 3, 4. They were like so fast. Like I was saying earlier, one side of the Greatest Hits album had 20 songs on it.
They did a tour and they timed the first show. They went on long tours, forever. So they timed the show from the first show to the last show. The show sped up 30 minutes or 25 minutes faster by the time they ended. The same set, the same everything, time wise. They played so fast that the show got shorter by 20 minutes or something like that by the end of the tour.
I think they toured in a van, like
They
a
did.
beat the shit van.
Yeah.
For like
For
the
their
first
whole
20
lives,
years.
right?
Yeah.
Like they piled in that van and they said so punk rock.
Yeah.
They
They're the
were.
definition of punk rock, man.
They started that scene down at CBGB's.
Yeah,
Sure.
They were, CBGB's was just coming through. But then you had little bands coming, making a little noise, but the Ramones came in there and made a lot of noise. People came in and made CBGB's what it was. I don't know what else to say about the Ramones. If you don't listen to Ramones, shame on you.
Yeah.
Go out, get the first album, turn it up to 11, and tell me I'm wrong.
I got something to say. Hey ho, let's go.
Yeah.
What's Doug's number one pick?
Gabba gabba hey, gabba hey.
Okay, well, my number one band that I have inducted the Ramones into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and that's Pearl Jam.
Pearl Jam.
Let's talk about Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam has 11 albums, sold 60 million albums altogether, played 1,034 shows, won 3 Grammys. They were the soundtrack of my teenage years. They covered everybody. They keep it simple. They kept the idea of rock and roll alive through the beginning of the years, especially because they covered everybody. Some people might say that they're the greatest cover band of all time because they covered every popular rock and roll song ever made.
They're the greatest live band I've ever seen.
Yeah, they bring it again. Going back to Fish and Grateful Dead, they never play the same show twice. And matter of fact, more than a couple of years ago, in 1990, let's see here. I'm sorry, from 2000 2001, they released 72 live albums.
I remember them.
You remember them?
Yeah, I
There was
remember.
like a
They
No
were like
Thrills
No
Brown
Thrills.
cover. Like
Totally.
Who did that? It was hard to see Pearl Jam. Again, they took on Ticketmaster. They went up to Capitol Hill. Mike McCready or was it Stone and Jeff went up there.
I still think they're the hardest ticket to get. I still have that
dude,
mentality.
that's-
Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's so hard to get Pearl Jam tickets because I remember the whole lottery thing.
In the future, we went through an experience recently to go see Pearl Jam, and it's going to go back to get hard again. Where if you don't get a ticket right from Ticketmaster, guess what?
Right,
you're
there's
not
no-
going to see
You're
them.
not going.
They're just really real guys. Like they backed up Neil Young on Mirrorball, and they didn't get credit for it.
Which is a great album. I'm not a big Neil Young
Neither
guy,
am I,
but
but that's a great. And in one of my opinions, the song "Alive,"
That whole album.
the whole album 10 is fantastic. But from going from number 6 on my list and number 1, Mike McCready said his guitar solo from Alive was inspired by Ace Frehley. I just read that piece of information. I checked up on it, so
Man,
it's true.
that first album was so good.
was your induction to them alive, or was
Yeah.
it the single soundtrack?
I remember the first time.
I had them both right away.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard Alive. My first band, across the street from the bar, there's a bowling alley. So the first band I was in, my buddy Ernie worked down there. So we had a band down there in the summer because the bowling alley was closed. He picked me up to go buy my first amplifier. And he had on the Alive album, I think Even Flow was playing, probably, or 10 album, I'm sorry. And I was like, what is this? And he's like, this is that new band Pearl Jam. And to hear that, when I'm going another 3 blocks to go buy my first amplifier at San Domingo Music Store, like it totally changed. Like my whole life changed in that 2-block car ride.
I remember the first time I saw Pearl Jam really early on they had an Unplugged, and that Unplugged became so famous.
Yeah, still is.
I saw that, and it was like, oh my God, what is this? I went out to the record store the next day and bought 10.
Yeah.
And right away, the beginning of the beginning of 10 is awesome. You hear that bottles breaking and everything like that. But Why Go Home?
Yeah.
It's first song. When you hear that riff come in.
It's unreal. It's just like it was. What band was bigger than Pearl Jam at that moment? Maybe Nirvana came around and changed it, but who knows?
I had the same experience where I remember going to my buddy's house, my buddy Steve's house in high school, and him just going like, "You have to hear this."
Yeah.
And he had the liner note, and I remember opening it up, like you saw him from like the chest up with the hands up. And if you open the full liner notes, it was
the whole poster.
the full
Yeah.
body. And I remember him opening it and just going like, "You have to hear this." That sense of urgency. Yeah, dude, you're 14 years old and you don't know anything about the world, but this shit is important.
This is what's up.
Yeah, it was at the same time that Smells Like Teen Spirit was hitting. The whole music world was changing.
Sure. Now I have a piece of information here, and I wanted to ask you guys. Remember this? Were you guys working at Blockbuster Music when Vitalogy came out?
I was in Sam Goody.
Okay. Now
I was still working there.
Now Pearl
I
Jam.
don't remember.
Now
Right?
I don't remember.
It was Versus and then Vitalogy.
Yes. Yeah.
So the first. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So Pearl Jam, going back, like super cool band. Just try to keep it real. Just Eddie Vedder's still the same guy. So they released Vitalogy on vinyl 2 weeks before you can buy it on CD. So if you bought it on vinyl, you heard it before anybody else. I don't know if you guys remembered that or not. I kind of remember it. I kind of do remember it.
I remember Pearl Jam always putting their stuff out on vinyl.
They made vinyl cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because vinyl comes around every couple of years. But I remember that exposure to Pearl Jam. Vinyl was making a real big comeback, and Pearl Jam had a lot to do with that, I think.
Well, yeah.
They kept the roots. They kept the roots of rock and roll together.
I think the world made the Foo Fighters #1 rock and roll band in America these days by population, and I don't think Pearl Jam gets the love.
Well, that's because Foo Fighters, they have more radio hit songs. Pearl Jam's the highest song that they ever reached on Billboard is #2, and it's a cover of Last Kiss.
Wow.
Which it's their only song that hit #2.
Yeah.
And that's a cover song, and that was just released by a fan club thing. And it just, people got wind of it and radio stations started playing it. But that's their highest single.
The crotchety old music store dude in me. Yellow Ledbetter was like a big. People would come into the
Huge.
music store
Yeah.
wanting that.
And it was a B-side.
Yeah, it was a B-side on like an import.
Yeah.
You'd be like, hey, you got to pay $17.99
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
these two
Yeah.
songs.
I remember going down the South Street and buying a covers album because it was all live covers. It's before the internet and everything like that, before you really get your
Yeah, we
hands on
used to,
stuff.
used to go to a record store and actually buy physical bootlegs to hear those covers.
Yeah.
The good old days.
Yeah.
Damn kids don't know how good they got it.
Yeah.
When did I turn 44?
Yeah, so
No, Pearl Jam's a great pick.
yeah, their charity work that they've done,
I don't think they put a bad album out. I don't think they ever put a bad album out.
I don't know.
Yeah, and they just
Like No Code is hands down my favorite album, but like I'm a nerd, like a super nerd fan. But if anybody listening out there, if you're familiar with Pearl Jam and you're not familiar with No Code, that is my favorite album, and I think it's just their best thing. Nothing wrong with the rest of their albums, and they're great. They closed down the Spectrum. In the bar, we have they played 4 shows. And they dressed up like Devo on Halloween, the last show ever to play the Spectrum. They're just the iconic rock band.
they're the last ones standing out of that generation.
Everybody's dead.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Alice in Chains is still around, but they have a different singer.
Yeah.
Chris Cornell's gone.
Chris Cornell's gone.
We went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they had this MTV exhibit. So they had Eddie Vedder's shirt that he wore on Saturday Night when Kurt Cobain killed himself.
It was when he overdosed. It was before he killed himself, and it said Kurt on it.
Oh, around the heart.
Yeah.
He wrote a circle with a K in it.
That's when
and
he
put his hand.
That's when he overdosed.
when he opened up. Was it? I thought.
No, it wasn't when he died. It was
Okay.
when he overdosed, and he was like in France, and that's when Eddie had the shirt on, and he pulled it open.
That's even cooler then. I thought I
That's
was
when
under
he
the impression
pulled
that it
open.
was.
It wasn't. It was before he died.
I listened to Eddie Vedder's induction of the Ramones into
Yeah, the
Rock and Roll
Mohawk,
Hall.
dude.
He had the
Yeah,
Mohawk.
super cool.
And he said that the Ramones were the Beatles to the Seattle scene.
Sure.
Totally.
Sure.
That's why they're my #1.
All right.
All right. Then we'll.
So last but not least is me. So my #1 band, and I've been in this argument for years. Sorry, Doug.
No.
Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Okay.
That's
all right.
To me is
They got the songs.
Yeah. They
is
do.
the ultimate American rock and roll band. They only made records for 4 years.
Really?
And the amount of music that came out of them was just monumental. Bad Moon Rising, Fortunate Son, Down on the Corner, Traveling Band, Who Will Stop the Rain, Run Through the Jungle, Put a Spell on You, Heard It Through the Grapevine, Have You Ever Seen the Rain? Hit after hit after hit. You thought they were 4 dudes riding one of those boats with the big fan on the back through the bayou.
Yeah.
But they were from California.
Sure.
They were right down the street from Haight-Ashbury where the Dead were recording.
Yeah.
They're California dudes. They're not from Louisiana.
Oh, I always thought they were from.
No.
Yeah.
John Fogerty said when Tom Petty died, he was on the Tom Petty. He's like, here I am, this guy writing songs, pretending that I'm from the Bayou or whatever. And here's this guy who's actually from the Bayou.
Yeah. Their songs were about war and politics, and they just jumped in. Like, to me, Fortunate Son, I think, is one of the greatest American rock and roll songs, and it's in the Forrest Gump soundtrack.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
That
And
sounds great.
The scene where the helicopter is flying in over Nam. The shot is behind the helicopter down at the rice paddy. You see the shadow of the helicopter over it, and the gunner's just kind of like chewing gum, looking out.
Yeah.
And it's playing Fortunate Son. It just sums up the attitude toward the war.
Totally. That's a great scene in that movie. Bubba and him, like,
Yeah.
no, we are not related.
It's funny. As I was researching them, they said that they played Woodstock, but they're not in the movie because they said Fogerty didn't want them in there because the Dead played before them. He
Yeah.
said the Dead put the audience to sleep.
Oh,
No
really?
way.
Yeah.
The Dead didn't put them in the
And
movie
what's-
either.
Yeah.
The Dead wouldn't put their movie in the Woodstock
the
movie
Woodstock
because it
movie?
was so bad.
Yeah.
It was like the worst set they ever did.
The amount of music that they came up with, their greatest hits is still on the Billboard Top 100. It was released in 1976.
Wow.
It's still there. And then the whole story about them, you were mentioning the bad record deal with Tom Petty. They self-destructed over their creative differences, and they agreed that if somebody in the band wrote a song, then that person would get to sing the song, and it was complete shit. Stu Cook wrote a song, and it was garbage. And then they self-destructed, but they had written such a bad contract that when John Fogerty came out with his solo, he came out with Old Man Down the Road. His old record label sued him and said he was plagiarizing
himself.
Run Through the Jungle.
How
Yeah,
messed
I
up
remember
is
So
that?
he got
I remember
sued
that.
for plagiarizing himself.
I remember that.
How does that happen?
And he still doesn't own the rights to his own material. He refused to play CCR stuff. He was so bitter.
Yeah.
And
I
it was
would be too.
when his brother was in the band. His brother died of AIDS. And it was
Oh, I didn't know that.
And John went to go make nice with him on his deathbed. And he was on his deathbed. He was like the guy that owned the original to their contract. He was like, he's my best friend, and you're not. And they never spoke again. He died.
Wow.
So now he goes out and he still will perform CCR stuff,
Yeah.
knowing that he doesn't make any money off of it, but he doesn't
Yeah.
care.
He did a great Super Bowl.
He's amazing. And I saw him live, which now brings to 2 the number of bands on this whole list.
Yeah.
And being honest with you, Bruce, I did not put CCR on my list because I knew they were going to be your number one.
Okay.
I purposely did not put them on my list.
Okay.
Because I knew you were going to have them number one, number two.
So the band, when I mentioned that they all got to sing their own songs, John Landau, who was the guy who said, I've seen the future of rock and roll, and his name is Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
He said that album was the worst album ever made by a major rock and roll band in the history of music.
Really?
So, and then after Tom Fogerty died, Stu Cook and Doug Clifford started Creedence Clearwater Revisited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's
awful.
It's awful.
I had a girlfriend one time. It's like, oh, look, I got this CCR for like in the bargain bin for $2.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this is the
Right.
revival.
It's the
stupid.
shit in like War.
You're so stupid.
When they got inducted to Rock and Roll of Fame, John Fogerty refused. I just
Refused.
heard this yesterday on
Yeah.
Sirius Radio. Refused to play with those guys. Who did he play with? He played with Springsteen.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
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 That
He
was
played
a great
Springsteen.
show.
That was a great show.
The opening of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And Fogerty had a whole, he's had a successful career by himself.
Put me in coach.
Yeah.
You know, like,
right. You hear
center
center field,
field, man.
every year
Yeah.
when baseball starts.
It's
up,
one of my
so-
dad's favorite or our dad's favorite
Yeah.
songs, man.
You got the guitar, like the bat.
I seen that in the Washington Museum. They had that. Oh no, I'm
supposed
sorry.
to-
They had it at the Baseball Hall of Fame.
They did.
The
Baseball
bat.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the bat, the Hall of Fame.
But going back to them, it was just hit after hit after hit, and it was
Yeah.
so much of their stuff was about Nam and what was going on in the world,
Yeah.
and it was just great music.
Did you hear the story when he wrote Fortune's Son? How he wrote that?
No.
He was he got discharged from the army,
Mm-hmm.
and instead he was living in San Francisco, He said it was the greatest day of his life. He was doing cartwheels in Golden Gate Park or whatever, and he just came up with that song. I'm not an unfortunate son.
I would be so relieved if I was him, not good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would write
Yeah.
a song too.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so that's it. So we've got our top 6 each. Why don't we take another little commercial break, and then let's come up with a list of 20 bands that should have been on this list that weren't, and we'll just rattle them off. This episode of the Prisoners of Rock and Roll is still brought to you by McCusker's Tavern. The building is at the intersection of 17th and Shunk Streets in South Philadelphia, but the atmosphere lives at the intersection of cold beer, sports, and great music. If they're good enough for this show, they're good enough for you. That's McCuskersTavern.com. All right, well, we're back from that second commercial for McCusker's Tavern. We're here, but you're not.
We're having a great time.
We can be here, and you're not. So we took a little break, and then we just circled up, and we just came up with some honorable mentions. So we all had really long lists of people, right? It was pages.
It was really hard to pick 6.
We just sat down and we just rattled off like 25 artists that we're just going to say that we thought about. So don't email us and say, why didn't you think? Actually, you know what? No, we do want
We
you
want
to
your
email.
emails.
Yeah.
We want some response of how
We
we're
want your
doing.
messages, we want your emails, we
Yeah.
want your texts.
So some honorable mentions, and we're just going to mention these names without even getting into any sort of discussion around them, but bands that have had an influence on us. The Foo Fighters, Social Distortion, Johnny Cash, The Talking Heads, Nirvana, The Grateful Dead, Fish, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, Chicago, Bill Haley and the Comets, the New York Dolls, any of the Motown acts, the Temptations, the Miracles, the Supremes, the Allman Brothers, the band, Leonard Skinner, Bon Jovi, Stone Temple Pilots, the White Stripes, Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band, George Thorogood and the Delaware Destroyers, Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the Eagles, Green Day, and Soundgarden. And there's 100
miles.
bands that we didn't even mention.
Go on and on and on. This show's been long enough.
Yeah, right.
Doing all
we're
the
pushing
bands.
3 hours. We can do a deep cut edition. So as we're just wrapping up, I guess we do have some listener feedback. So
Yeah.
we did have Dan from Boston send us a message about our Motley Crue episode, cover art. A lost thing is music is going to digital. And he said that, hey guys, people do still buy music vinyl. Vinyl is all the rage again, so artwork really does matter. People don't buy records like we used to buy CDs when we were young, but it's not like physical music or artwork is dead now. Thanks for that comment, Dan.
That's great.
Yeah.
I hope more people feel like that.
Yeah, I hope the album cover comes back, makes a big comeback and big piece of art again.
Do you guys listen to vinyl? Do you
I
buy
do.
vinyl?
I have a really nice vinyl collection. I have a really nice turntable.
Yeah.
Doug, do you?
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh, you should get on
You
that.
really? That's surprising.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Any vinyl that I have is something like I buy and I frame and I hang up at my house.
Oh, we got to get
So,
you started on the vinyl collection, bro.
everything's all digital.
Me too. I threw my CDs out years ago. I got a box filled with stuff that I'll never throw out. But
That's really surprising. You're such a music guy, dude. You don't have
you have
like,
a new hobby, sir.
Yeah.
I don't.
Dude, they don't take up much space vinyl. You just need like a
You
bookcase.
need a record player and you got to put the shit on. I'll quote Bad Religion. I'm a 21st century digital boy.
You don't
I
know
like
what
my
you're
digital
missing.
stuff,
There you
so.
go.
You don't know what you're missing.
All right. Well, so I'm losing out. I'm missing out.
Yeah, we'd say thank you for all of our listeners that got to us last week. Michael Leese sending in the
Brian
nice-
Overton.
Brian Overton. Yeah, man, this was really good time tonight. It
Yeah.
was hard to come up with 6. We did it.
And give us some feedback what you think about what our picks were.
Yeah. So we're on social media. We got a Facebook page. We're on.
We're close to 300 people.
We're pretty much on every platform now that you could possibly listen to your podcast from. You can email us at prisonersofrockandroll@gmail.com. You can also find us at prisonersofrockandroll.com. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. We don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but I think we're going to end it here and then we'll
Yeah.
figure that out.
All right, this is an absolute pleasure, guys, tonight.
This was awesome.
Thanks again.
So
All right, cowboys and cowgirls.
peace out.